Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 195. We're getting dangerously close to 200. I don't know if I'll do something special for 200. I want to start this off with a bit of a... What should I talk about? Usually I talk about my week first, but I want to jump into the comments. That's right, the comment review real quick. So, we had actually a lot... People have been commenting on the podcast recently. They have been pulling up in the YouTube comments. Thank you for everyone who's been dropping commentary. We have one question. Comes from our last episode from Sketz. Wonder who that is. New podcast drop. Nice. Your mentioning of Reggie Fils-Aimé reminded me of something. Have you seen the YouTube video, What Reggie Really Thinks of Jay Allard? And what is your opinion? What do you think of Jay? What do you think of Reg? Did you know that in South Africa there was a bootleg NES called Reggie's Entertainment System? What this comment is referring to is an old... I guess it's kind of a YouTube poop from... Geez, how old is this video? 8 years ago... Wait. So this upload is from 8 years ago, but the original video has to be much older. Apparently, the original was removed at some point. It's been re-uploaded by somebody, and it is a it's a sentence mixing restructured meme video of Reggie Fils-Aimé, former Nintendo of America president, talking about Jay Allard, who is actually a really important guy. So, well, first of all, I think the video is fun. It's a fun video. I miss this style of really rapid fire sentence mixing. I think that stuff like that I think it's fun. I was never a big YouTube poop guy, but I respect the craft, and I think that some of them can be really amusing. I made a bit of a YouTube poop. I didn't think of it as such when I was making it, but in the Ultimate Gamer video, the barrel number 1. Barrel number 2. 3 barrels. Barrel number 1. 3 barrels. Apparently people really liked that. I just thought it was dumb. So yeah, video's funny. What do I think of Jay and Reggie? So Jay Allard is a really interesting guy. He's basically responsible for... He was an employee at Microsoft. He is frequently cited as being a key figure in Microsoft... Just reading off his Wikipedia, he was instrumental in bringing Microsoft into the internet age. He basically led a lot of the development of internet infrastructure and I guess Windows NT that was the version, right? A lot of the technology that went into that, which of course was pretty important. But for our purposes, he was also he co-founded the Xbox project in 1999. Let's see, primarily focused on the Xbox software platform, Xbox Live, and recruiting third-party developers and publishers to support the program. So he was on Xbox from around the formation of the project in 99 all the way up to when did Don Matrick. Whoa, I misspelled Don real hard. Don Matrick. When did he join Microsoft? So 2007. Yeah, 2007. So from 99 to 2007, and I think So, something I've learned kind of recently is that Xbox heads refer to the post-Jay Allard incident as the matricide, which I think is pretty funny. But man, you could not have any, a starker difference between two styles of leadership. I've really grown to appreciate the early, first 10 or so years of the Xbox's history, especially when you go back and you look at the types of games that they secured. It was brought to my attention the other day. They had goddamn Steins Gate as an exclusive That's crazy. On the Xbox, I think that would have been 360. That's like a really wild exclusive to get for that platform. Jay Allard, at least, like, I haven't done like a ton of research into him. I know he's come up in my videos every now and again, but I can appreciate his vision for the Xbox brand and the platform, and actually how holistic Xbox used to be. There's just so many cool things about Xbox. They were the first. I think they were really early on the train with like, okay, for instance, Xbox Live. That was crazy. I think that was actually honestly pretty revolutionary. There were internet services for on consoles before, but Xbox Live was so full featured, it was so well integrated. I mean, I think that it was genuinely, I think one of the reasons Halo was such a big deal wasn't just that it was the first really good feeling first person shooter on a console. It was also that the experience of going online and having voice chat and matchmaking and stuff was completely new. Like, that blew a lot of minds back in 2001. That was like a feature set that was a legitimate value add. That now is just standard, right? And the fact that it was free at the time. Gee, wonder when that changed. Also, Xbox Live Arcade and their online storefronts. Xbox was really important in the kind of slow bubbling that happened over the course of the 2000s and the early 2010s of small independent creators getting games published, not just on like their own little website on PC and stuff. You know, Steam was getting a little more popular, although that didn't launch till 06 or 07. No, Steam was like 04. What am I talking about? Right? Oh, God, I know this. This is all going in a video. I don't like to spoil the videos that I'm coming up with next. But there's a lot of material here that I'm like tiptoeing around because it relates a lot to what I'm talking about in the next episode. Yeah, it's really fascinating how many indie games and Japanese games Xbox tried to cultivate. It didn't work out for them for a number of reasons that honestly I think would be warrant its own video. But I generally like Jay Allard's early leadership at Xbox. He seems like a cool guy. I don't know, maybe he ate children and I just don't know about that. But from like my cursory knowledge of him and my general familiarity with that kind of OG Xbox to the early 360 period, he's pretty cool in my book. And Reggie, I have to admit, I love Reggie. I think that Reggie has a really fun, honest, and I mostly just know him as a public figure for Nintendo of Japan. He's a representative to me and kind of a character. I think that when Reggie got brought on, he was sort of fighting an uphill battle because he was coming from like Coca-Cola. He was on their board and he jumped to Nintendo. And especially in those days, there was a sort of protective culture around video games when the audience was a little bit more insular, especially online. Excuse me. It was a little bit more insular. And so the idea of an outsider coming in and representing a company as big and as cherished as Nintendo, especially when it seemed like, it's very easy to look at his early press conferences and stuff and his like, hey, I'm working at Nintendo now, and see him as sort of just some out-of-touch business guy who's coming into our hobby. And I think what Reggie did that was really smart is he leaned into it. Reggie kind of played this character. I think he was aware of that, and I appreciate that I think he made a really good faith effort to engage with the medium and the culture surrounding video games in a way that a lot of just random corporate guys who come into the industry don't. Like, you know, in a way that a Bobby Kotick doesn't. Like, you might be a great businessman, but I think what endeared people so much to Reggie was that he acknowledged that he was coming in as sort of an outsider, or at least was perceived as an outsider. I don't know how familiar he really was with games, you know, how hardcore he was. And he leaned into it. He kind of played this character, I almost felt, of the sort of out of touch dad he's like the Are You Winning son. He's like the dad from that comic. That was Reggie. Where the way he acted, he almost sounded like he didn't even know what he was talking about while he was reading it, but he delivered it with so much sincerity and excitement that it felt like he was really making an effort. Like, I like Reggie. He feels like someone's dad who doesn't really quite get what's going on, but he's excited to be there to support you. And I think generally the Nintendo I don't know how much, I'm going to be honest. Nintendo is so, I feel like their inner workings are so weird. Like, we don't know the teams inside Nintendo. Like, we know there are so many different teams inside of Capcom, for instance. I don't really know if there's that same level of transparency at Nintendo. So I couldn't tell you if, like, during Reggie's regime, during the regime, there was 20 canceled Mario games that would have been awesome. So I can't tell you that. But, I will say, actually, he was, I think during the whole Wii U era, he was among the board members who took pay cuts. I believe Iwata, Miyamoto, I think Sakurai? I don't know if he was technically I don't know if he was at the company then technically, or if he had already sort of left. But, yeah, a number of Nintendo higher-ups took pay cuts. Their Iwata's mandate was no layoffs. No layoffs, we'll just take pay cuts. And Iwata took the most. I think he ended up with like 40% of his starting pay cut by the end, because he took like 1 or 2. And I believe Reggie and Miyamoto also both took cuts. And I have to respect that a lot. I think that's a really cool employee-friendly way of doing business. I respect that a lot. And hey, eventually they made the comeback. It was Iwata's philosophy, but I have to respect everyone for going along with it. Now as for the Reggie entertainment system, I actually haven't looked this up because I want my what the fuck is this? Okay, so I'm looking at a picture of the Reggies. It is just a Famicom? It's just a Famicom. TV games from 1999. In R bucks. Reggie bucks? I don't know what they use in South Africa. That's pretty funny. I do get a real kick out of the off-brand consoles. Excuse me. I love the Soulja game. The Soulja game console. Every couple years, Soulja Boy comes back, and he just starts buying console units and stuff. Like, what is it? He bought, like, the most recent one. He bought the 8-bit Do, or Do, whatever it's pronounced. Their little handheld thing, and just repackaged it as the Soulja game. What a funny guy. Reggie's Toy and Baby World, giving joy to a child. I was thinking that this was going to be like a Reggie Fils-Aimé product and that his face would be on there. Could you imagine? They should have sold a version. I think what would have saved the Wii U is if they sold a version, it was Reggie's version. Wii U Reggie edition. And at startup, you would get a little Reggie Fils-Aimé video, have him on a green screen, and he could be your virtual guide. He could be your, like, a desktop buddy. He could be like Bonsai Buddy or Bonzi Buddy, and guide you around the Wii U's navigation. He could be like, whoa, 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 be sure to look down at the gamepad while playing Zombie U on your Nintendo Wii U system. He'd say it exactly like that. Anyway, I hope that answered your question. So this past weekend, I attended YumeCon in beautiful San Jose, California, for their 2025 Expo. It's not really an expo, it's a convention. It's an anime/gaming convention that I have been going to with my friends since like 2017, when it used to be run out of just a college. It was just we go to Foothill College, and it was just there on the quad, a whole anime convention. And it's been an annual staple of ours that we just keep going to. Once I met Kat, she's been along for the ride with us. And this year, I say, was probably the biggest. It's kind of fun to see a convention you've been going to since it was really small slowly build up. So they used to be, like, the last couple years, they were out of a much smaller hotel. It was just like 2 floors of a hotel that they hosted this convention out of. This time it was at a Hilton Doubletree by Hilton. It's some like big sprawling hotel thing with a bunch of business meeting rooms and stuff like that, and ballrooms, and it was pretty big. It wasn't the entire building, of course, but it was maybe a quarter, like a third of the whole hotel was taken up by the convention. And it was a nice venue. It was nice to walk around there. Specifically, I was there to present a panel. So I think I mentioned this on the last episode, but I did go and present. I submitted a panel because I thought, like, hey, they just take anyone. And I submitted a panel that was essentially a panelized version of my old video on the history of the ownership rights to Tetris. And I presented it for a bursting crowd, a sweltering crowd of about 7 people total, because I got a pretty late night slot. I got like 7:30, but it was a lot of fun. I have not done public speaking in a long time, and I absolutely love doing it. It's one of those things where every single time I've mentioned that I really love doing public speaking, someone tells me that I'm insane and I'm crazy. But I've always really enjoyed it. I think I used to have a little bit of stage anxiety when I was a kid, but eventually I was in band. I did a lot of performances. I did a little bit of theater when I was a kid, and eventually it's fine. It's one of those things where you have to, like, choose not to get anxious or tense up, because the moment you do, it starts a vicious cycle where it's really hard to restart your brain going again. Like, what's the next line? What's the next slide? What's the next section? What's the next thing I gotta play? As long as you just never tense up or freak out and just kind of force yourself to relax, it's honestly, like, I find it really fun. I think it's, I wish there were more people there. That's the only reason I was bummed out. Kat was like, oh, because she did my slides. She was like, oh, well, at least there's not that many people here, because I think she was getting a little stage fright. But I was like, man, I wish there was 1,000 people here. That might be a little too much. That's a lot of people. You need a big sound system for that. I don't think you could fit that many people in like a hotel conference room. But it was a ton of fun. I uploaded it on the side channel plus the Cellar plus R. If you want to go see the recording, the AV situation could have been better. The way it was set up, the projector was on the table that was next to the what is it? The screen, the slide. What is it called? The projector screen, whatever. So I like to get up and get around and move around and talk a bit and talk and walk while I'm presenting, but it put me in like a bit of an awkward position because if I walk at all in front of the screen, it's going to be my shadow's going to cast over it. There's a big dead zone. So I kind of had to stick to a couple spots that I figured out. Also, the sound, it didn't really... I wanted to record on my own microphone to get maybe a little crisper sound than just off of the straight camera mic that I had set up in the corner by the door. But it wouldn't have worked out just because of the echo and where the speakers were and where I was. So if it was a perfect world, I wouldn't be... I would have set up the room a little bit differently. But hey, you work with what you've got. And it was a ton of fun. When I got down, I enjoyed public speaking so much that when I got off, I was like, I want to do it again. When we got there the next day, I was a little bummed out because I didn't have a performance to look forward to. I wanted I felt a little bit of like a runner's high after it. I actually, when I first started doing YouTube, I found public speaking... I found talking to a camera more awkward and difficult than talking to a crowd of people. And that's something I think if you go back and look at my first dozen or so videos, I think it's maybe a little obvious when I'm on camera that, and even on the mic, that I'm a lot more like tense and a little more buttoned up. I'm not as natural or loose as I feel now. Because I had to imagine a group of people. I just love the bouncing off of a crowd's energy, even if it's not a super hype crowd or anything like that. I really enjoy looking around and looking at people and making eye contact. And that stuff's like, I don't know, it's a really good time. It's really invigorating for me. So I just decided, like, hey, why don't I just submit panels to other conventions and just see where it goes? So hopefully in the future I get to do more of that because it was a ton of fun. It was a lot of fun. So shout out to the UMACon staff for accepting my application. And that was like the most interesting that happened in my week. Everything else is stuff that I will be mentioning in a second because, man, we got a lot of movies and news, and I spent a long time playing System Shock 2. But before we get to that, I want to maybe get a little more serious for a bit because this happened kind of recently, and I wanted to give... It's a little weird to say a shout out, but I guess a little bit of a segment to talk about Rebecca Heineman, who passed away the other day. If you aren't familiar with Rebecca Heineman, aka Burger Becky, she is one of those people from video game history who I think in the popular... If you look at her credits and what she was doing and what companies she started and where she worked, she's not like a Hideo Kojima where it's like, this is the name that you put on the front of the trailer. But she's really important in the sense that there's all of these games and all these companies and stuff going on, and she's just always kind of around. She was just around there doing stuff, doing really important stuff that just honestly didn't get a lot of attention, and is, I would say, one of the more one of the less recognized talents, like really talented people throughout gaming history. So first of all, I think one of the most significant things that you could immediately give to her is that she founded Interplay. She was a co-founder of Interplay, which I probably shouldn't have to justify why Interplay is important. Funny enough, she worked on Wasteland, which was an inspiration for a later Interplay game, Fallout. One of her most frequent contributions to the industry is actually that she was an incredible porter. She was like a one-woman porting machine. In fact, probably the most well-known story about her is that she is responsible for the 3DO port of Doom, which is infamously terrible, but not really because of her. She essentially crunched that thing out in like 2 weeks or something, some absurdly small period of time, because that port it got licensed by some dude who literally didn't understand how computers worked, and he thought that you could just make the game work on the other thing. And she was basically saddled with this unbelievable, horrible job. And the fact that it runs at all is a testament to how good she was at programming. She worked, just looking through her credits. She was a designer on the Bard's Tale series, which is an oft-forgotten early adventure game, RPG adventure game series. Let's see. I'm just going through it. She worked on a lot of stuff. Age of Empires, Medal of Honor, Icewind Dale, Hexen 2, Myth 3, Baldur's Gate 2, Redneck Rampage, the Jazz Jackrabbit series. She ported Wolfenstein 3D to the Apple II, Tempest, Killing Time. Maybe not all of these are games that... Wolfenstein... I mentioned Wolfenstein 3D. Yeah, I just said that. Maybe not all of these... Oh my god, Apple... Ultima 1 on the Apple II. Out of This World, the ports for the Super Nintendo and the Apple II. Like Neuromancer on DOS. A ton of stuff. Has thanks on tons of different games. This incredibly long, storied career. She was also a notable... I mentioned her in my LGBT games video because she is a very notable transgender person in video games. Funny enough, so the reason she was called Burger Becky was because even back when they founded Interplay together, she was a little bit... she had some reservations. She was a little unconfident about living as a man, and she would just like keep hamburgers in her desk. She just kept burgers in her desk drawer, and so she asked, so her nickname became Burger Heineman, and in fact, on tons and tons of her older credits, she is credited as Burger as her first name. So, a real shame. It was really unfortunate. I follow her on social media. Her wife passed a few years ago, and she herself got a very sudden cancer diagnosis last month in October. And then it was really weird because I feel like a week ago she posted that she just got her prognosis and she had 4 days to live. That's like, fuck. That's like... It's very difficult to put myself in those shoes. Like, I'm a pretty young person. It's hard for me to imagine being told I have 4 days to live. I don't know how I'd cope. I don't know how I'd cope with that. That's a really weird thing for me to think about. And even stranger is that the announcement of her death came out like 2 days later. It was very short and very sudden. There's a lot of various different industry figures who are given some tributes to her because of how notable she was, and her being a great coworker and a great friend, and just a really cool person. She's got tons of great stories on YouTube of her just talking about game design stuff and stories, old industry stories. She was a real important treasure to the industry, and it's really unfortunate that she went so soon. When she honestly, I think one of the saddest things is she had a lot of life left. Like she was doing stuff. She was doing stuff up till like the weeks that she died, until before her health just dropped off. It's always weird. Like, I don't know how respectful Hey, if I die, you can talk about me however you want. You can say, when Taigen got super dead, when he fucking exploded. I think that exploding is like the funniest way to say that something died. There's just something really something so absurd about it. So if that ever happens to me, you have full permission to say Taigen got flung into the sea. In fact, if I die, please make up increasingly surreal ways. Just say, like, it was a real tragedy. Taigen was so young when he got flung into the sun at 10 trillion miles an hour. Yeah, so if you want to honor her memory at all, go watch some of her old videos. Go play the 3DO port of Doom. Just go check out like any of the stuff that she worked on, that she was a part of. Yeah, really sad to say and see. And yeah, thank you, Becky. Thank you, Becky, for doing so much for this industry and this wonderful medium. She had a very short message that she left before on social media before she went. That was about how she's finally joining her wife now. So try not to get emotional right now. And now I have to transition over to like wackier things. I wish death was more funny. Honestly, death can be really funny if it happens to certain people. There is a guy in my YouTube comments who tried to get into an argument with me about how Charlie Kirk was a hero, which was really funny. And like, I completely forgot about him the other day. Like, he was really set on having a debate with me in the comments. And personally, I think that debating is a sport for like savage animals. And I refuse to engage in any debate in good faith, especially over the internet. But he was so dead set on having a debate with me about Charlie Kirk. And I was just like making fun of him the whole time. And then like a month or 2 months go by, and suddenly he replies, he comes running back again to the comments section to leave another reply to that thread about how socialism is, I don't even know what he was trying to say. It was like, stuff isn't, everything can't be free all the time. And I think he was talking about how there was like a New York judge who objected to Zoran Mamdani's free bus program or something like that. That's the only thing I can even imagine, because he was talking about it like there was some new news. And I just thought that was really fascinating, because he saw that, and then like a month after having no contact with me at all, he thought at some point, I need to go back to this YouTube comment section and rub it in Taigen's face. I need him to know. Like, it was his first, I haven't thought about this guy in like a month. And he's like, it's kind of romantic, honestly. I feel like eventually one day he's going to win me over and we're going to get married. You know who else is getting married? Jeff Keighley to not Hideo Kojima, but to Expedition 33, the game nominated in like 20 different categories in the Game Awards. Game Awards nominations segment. So I will be doing my annual Game Awards stream as I usually do, because I don't know, I think they're fun in a morbid way. I've also been pleased with the fact that they actually improved last year. I think I had to commend Keighley and the team. They actually put on a pretty good show last year. The last one was free. A lot of the issues I had in previous years were remedied. It was much better balanced with feeling like an actual award show and not just a series of advertisements. The games themselves that were shown off had a good amount of variety. there's only so much you can do depending on who's buying ad slots, but I didn't have that same sense of exhaustion that I usually have at the end of a Game Awards stream, where I feel like I've just been seeing the same game over and over and over and over again, and it feels kind of like a farce after a certain point. So, good on them, good on the team, but I wanted to talk about the next one, the upcoming one, because the categories... So as usual, I have not played most of the games that are nominated, but I want to take a second to acknowledge the games that are nominated. Game of the Year. Game of the Year nominees: Expedition 33, Death Stranding 2, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Hades 2, Silk Song, and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Do you notice something weird about that? There's no, for the most part, besides, I guess, Death Stranding 2, but even that's where this is not a traditional blockbuster lineup. I guess Donkey Kong Bonanza is a Nintendo title. It's a mainline Nintendo title. It's kind of like I'm gonna say something that's probably really dumb. It's like the DK64 to Super Mario 64. Like Bonanza to Odyssey. Bonanza is to DK64 as Odyssey is to Mario 64. I think that makes sense. But I hope you get what I mean. Hades 2, Silk Song. Hades 2 and Silk Song are games by relatively small teams. These are typically considered indie games. I know we had a whole long discussion about new categorizations and stuff. You'd probably consider these maybe a single A at that point. I don't know exactly the scope of Hades 2. Expedition 33 definitely falls into that double A category. Death Stranding 2 is a big budget game, but it's also a weird Kojima game. It's not a typical one. And then Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is probably the dark horse of this lineup, but even then, it's a weird Czechoslovakian, very European RPG. These are not traditional, the Kingdom Come series. It's no Skyrim. It's much closer to something like Gothic, right? And that's kind of cool. It's really interesting how... I was thinking about this the other day. Every now and again, a new story comes out that reinforces my opinion that we're in the middle of a AAA contraction, where the tippy top end of the industry is really having trouble staying afloat due to a lot of things: bad decision making, the economy. The economy honestly compounds a lot of the bad decision making, and a bunch of other factors, right? The pandemic and all these sorts of things affected. It's a big topic, and I'm also starting to burp, so it's harder for me to speak in full sentences. And interestingly, it's almost like a micro or a macro version. You're gonna roll your eyes. Of what happened to the fighting game community. That's right, fighting game segment. This really interesting phenomena happened that I think you could almost look at as an example of human herd behavior, human group behavior, where when Street Fighter 4 came out, everyone played Street Fighter 4. It was the biggest fighting game. Everyone who was into fighting games played a little bit of Street Fighter 4. It was very rare that you got someone who was like, yeah, I just play Melty Blood. What's Street Fighter 4? No one's really doing that. Maybe there's people who only play Tekken or something like that. But SF4 was the great unifier. Everyone united under this one banner. And then Street Fighter 5 came out. And that game was really bad at launch. That game was so bad, it almost killed the series. But the thing was, so a lot of people didn't want to play Street Fighter V. They bounced off of it. There was some more hardcore people who stuck with the game, and then eventually it got much better. But in those first couple years, there's all these people who are left like, okay, well, Street Fighter sucks now, but I still want to play fighting games. So what do I do? And it turns out, oh, there's actually a whole wide world of fighting games. So this really interesting thing happens where the scene doesn't really grow that much because there isn't like one big game to get everyone in on the party. But everyone who's already there, who got in there because of Street Fighter 4, now starts to spread out and discover, hey, BlazBlue's really cool. Hey, Soul Calibur's really cool. There's all these neat Japanese fighting games that aren't Street Fighter. Guilty Gear Xrd got a big push during that time because it also happened to be nearing its final revision, Rev 2, when the game was the most refined. Like, the timing just matched up really well. So Guilty Gear started to get a real push around 2017, 2016. And this interesting thing happened where, I think to an outsider's perspective, fighting games kind of sort of went away. You know, Tekken, people playing Tekken 7, stuff like that. But the community actually sort of got really hardy. It got kind of strong because all of these other pillars, it wasn't so decentralized. All these other pillars started getting built up of all these different communities. And then Strive came out in 2021, and that brought a lot of new people in. And then Street Fighter 6 came out, and that launched really well. And now a bunch of more people came in. So when you have those big releases of games that actually go over very well, that serve to be good jumping on points for people hopping into the genre or who are curious about it, the fact that there's now this really wide community of people it helps a lot. It actually leads, I think, to an overall long term to a pretty good a good situation. And I think something similar is happening right now in gaming. So people don't have a lot of cash right now. The economy is not that great in America. I'm speaking from an American perspective here. So do I want to spend $70 on a game? Maybe. But hey, there's like a $40 game that's made by a slightly smaller company. $40, $50, $60. $60 looks pretty good now. $30. There's tons of games for $10, $20. How much is Silksong? Let me look up how much Silksong, like one of the biggest, most hyped games of the year. $20. It's $20. Even if you're strapped for cash, making like a $20 purchase of a game, you know, with your paycheck money, that doesn't feel that bad, you know, if you think it's interesting and cool and a lot of people are hyping it up. So I think that I think that in a few years, we're going to see an interesting knock-on effect where there will be, once things kind of stabilize, I don't know how long that's going to be or what's going to happen in between, but eventually stuff's going to get built back up. An entire industry can't just die, especially not one like video games. And I think once that happens, we'll see a very interesting spread. Like, okay, let's go back to that game of the year. That game of the year list. Look at the variety. Look at the variety of genres on offer here. Clair Obscur, it's a French game, but heavily inspired by Japanese RPGs. Death Stranding 2, which is like a weird walking, hiking. I don't know what you'd categorize Death Stranding as. It's sort of an open world package delivery thing with all this like slow building up of networks of travel and stuff like that, and there's combat, and it's a weird game, right? Donkey Kong Bonanza, which is kind of a classic 3D. There's a lot of collectathoning, I guess. It's like a 3D Nintendo game. Hades 2, a roguelite, Hollow Knight Silksong, which is I hate saying Metroidvania, but I will. A Metroidvania game. And then Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which, as I said before, is like a not super traditional RPG. Traditional in the way that I think a lot of mainstream game players are not very used to the types of systems, that are on display. It's not exactly a power fantasy game. That's a really interesting spread of genres to have popular enough and that's sold well enough that they're up for a nomination like Game of the Year. They do that usual thing. I was just clicking through the nominations for every category, and yeah, a lot of them are just repeats. Same one. You're going to see a lot of Death Stranding 2, a lot of... actually, Ghost of Yote's up for a lot of these. Expedition 33, it's nominated for like a billion things. It just won every single award it was nominated for at the Golden Joysticks. Hades 2 and Silksong. Like, these are all the big heavy hitters. Heavy hitters of the year. Silent Hill F is also in quite a few of these. What are some of these other categories? Can't believe No Man's Sky is still getting support. That's wild. Independent game. Oh my god, yeah. Look at best independent game. This was so okay. So their definition of independent and indie is it's a little weird. We've been over this before. There was the Dave the Diver debacle, the DDD, if you will. But again, like look at there's two Hades, Silksong, Expedition 33, but also Blueprints, which I mean, it's kind of rare that a puzzle game gets so much buzz. Haven't played it yet. Someone's told me I would really like it because I like Myst a lot. Ball X Pit, which is a game that I saw people talking about. Absolem, which I think is another Metroidvania-y thing. I've also heard is great. They do debut... Oh, they took it off! They took off Megabonk. Megabonk was originally nominated for an award for debut indie, and the developer objected to being called a debut indie. So they actually took it off. That's interesting. Let's see. The only reason I know about Best Mobile Game is because there's a clip of Jeff Keighley saying Uma Musume, but he says Uma Muzimi or something. It's weird. You would think that at this point he would be able to pronounce Japanese words like properly. You'd think that with someone who's like best friends with Hideo Kojima. Do you think he's been mispronouncing Hideo Kojima's name this whole time? He's been calling him like Hido. Oh boy, I love playing Street Fighter with my favorite guy, Ryu. What else is nominated here? Oh, Best Fighting. I gotta talk about Best Fighting. So, I have taken... I think last year was when I really started talking about it, but I take a little bit of an issue with the way that their criteria for certain categories and what kind of deserves to, I think, have its own category. So, infamously, a couple years ago, the Best Fighting Game category has been maybe one of the wonkier ones. I feel like no other category gets as weird as this one, and I think it's because fighting games kind of require a little bit more insider knowledge, and they just don't have anyone who really specializes that hard in them working on the nominees. So the nominees are 2XKO, which technically the developers don't even consider released, but hey, we gave it to Multiverse as a game that was in beta actually that whole time. Trust me, guys, it was just a beta. 2XKO, Capcom Fighting Collection 2, Fatal Fury City of the Wolves, Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection, which is like... and Virtua Fighter 5 Revo World Stage. So we're like scraping the bottom of the barrel. There are only like 2 actually new fighting games on this list, which is City of the Wolves and 2XKO. So first of all, the fact that there are 2 different collections on here is a little silly, and it makes it look like it was kind of a weak year for fighting games. To be honest, maybe only 1 or 2 really good fighting games come out per year. Because again, it's kind of a specialized genre. People aren't just pumping them out. But there's other stuff, like Hunter x Hunter came out, and I know that game was whack as fuck, but you could at least nominate. Like, let's look at other, hang on, 2025 fighting games. Let's see. Everyone's just talking about the nominations. Yeah, not that many. Bleach. Bleach Rebirth of Souls. Yeah, the Dissidia type Bleach game, which I still haven't played. It doesn't go on sale for low enough for me to justify it. Yeah, like you could have taken the collections off, and Virtua Fighter 5 is literally just a re-release update of a game from like 10-15 years ago. It's really weird. I think that there should be categories for certain types of content. There should be categories for things that are... There should be collections, and like I said last year, I think there should be a category... I think there needs to be a category for collections, DLC, and remakes / high-end remasters. All as three separate things. This is like when... That was my issue with when... What was it? I think that Cyberpunk expansion got nominated or something like that, and it was like, I don't know if I forget what category it was in, but I was like, I don't know, like, it probably deserves a nomination for something, but it feels like it's kind of muscling in on what could have gone to maybe a new game that actually released this year. So I think that those should go in their own category. I think that there are so many remakes and remasters as of late that, honestly, a lot of which are really good. Like that Silent Hill 2 remake. Or, I'm going to talk about System Shock later. The System Shock remake was great. I think that deserved a nomination for something in the year it came out. Because it's not just voting on what's the best game, right? Like most of the other categories. When you're talking about a remake or a remaster, you're looking at how well does this preserve and maybe freshen up an original experience? What does the best job? Because there's bad ones, but there's been a lot of good ones. For instance, the System Shock remaster. This is going to be a System Shock heavy podcast. I'm going to warn you guys. It's been on the brain. The System Shock remake, I should say. Is everyone gonna love that game? No. It's a great remake. But the game it's remaking might not be your cup of tea. System Shock has its little quirks and its little eccentricities. You can use a guide from 1995 to finish the System Shock remake because it is that close to the original. It is such a faithful recreation. It might just be a game that drives you absolutely insane. So that's what you should be judging it on. Collections as well. Like, honestly, the fact that the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection is nominated here is a total joke. Like, have you seen that game? That did not release in a state that was... This feels like a what do we got pick. That did not release in an acceptable state at all. Are you telling me that okay, like, the collection came out. It's got a ton of games. That's great. It's got a ton of documentary material. That's great. That stuff's all cool. It doesn't have lobbies for online play. It doesn't have comprehensive move lists. It doesn't have... all you have is, like, quick play with randos online. in the year of our, you can't even invite a friend on, I don't know if it's on PC or just on PC or just on console, but at least one version of the collection, if you play online, is absolutely fucked. The input delay is horrific. The sound bugs out all the time. It stutters and breaks constantly. It is genuinely unpleasant and uncomfortable to listen to because the sound is cutting out for a few frames every couple seconds. It's so bad. It is replete with issues. It is a horrible way to experience those games, especially online. This should not be nominated. Like, it's honestly a farce that this collection has been nominated. Capcom Fighting Collection 2, perfectly good collection. I actually just played it recently at the convention that I was at. They had a game room, and we played a bit of Plasma Sword, which is really fun. Rival Schools is also really fun, or Project Justice is on that collection. Yeah, good collection, but I don't think a collection should be on here in place of like an actual game. And then what did I say? Remakes, remaster, so like the remake, remasters, collections, and DLC, I think should all be their own categories. DLC is like you can judge it on its own, but it should be a different category. What are the other categories they've got here? Best family, sim strategy. Here's another thing. The Final Fantasy Tactics remaster remake, the Ivalice Chronicles. Like, awesome games, classic games. I don't know why they're being treated like a new thing. Again, that should be in the remake remaster category that I am proposing. Best multiplayer, I've only played Peak. Out of all of these, best adaptation, that's going to go to Last of Us. Could you imagine if Minecraft? I think the fan vote's overwhelmingly going to go to Minecraft movie. Most anticipated game is such a funny category. Most anticipated microtransaction, that should be another one. What is it? Content creator of the, hey, what the fuck? I'm not on here. You put the Burnt Peanut on best content creator, but you couldn't put Taigen Moon? Come on, guys. Are you kidding? That's how I know. This is a sham award show. This is a total sham. I'm voting for Sakura Miko. Best esports game. This is the one where they always put Counter-Strike, Dota, League of Legends. And then it used to be Rocket League, but I'm sorry to say Rocket League has been supplanted by Valorant, the Riot takeover. So now there's only space for one other game, which this year is Mobile Legends Bang Bang. I think it is actually fucking nutty that they didn't put Street Fighter 6 on this over fucking Mobile Legends Bang Bang. Are you kidding? Oh, fuck, whatever. And best esports athlete. Obviously, the only guys I really know are Kakaru and Mena RD. I like Mena a lot. I'd give the vote to Mena. Kakaru's also a great. I think it would be really nice if he got it, seeing as he's retiring. He's had an amazing run in Street Fighter, and it would be cool if he got it. It's probably going to go to some Valorant guy. And best esports team. Well, you guys know I love Team Falcons. Everyone knows that I'm like the biggest Team Falcons fan on the world, in the world. And then finally, player's choice. Are these for games? I don't know what those are for. I forget what the player's choice is for. Yeah. So do I take the Game Awards super seriously? I kind of take them seriously in a fun way. Kind of like it's like rooting for a sports team where, well, I don't know about that actually, because like some people, like, their team loses and they beat their family over it. I'm not like beating my wife over the fact that Expedition 33 isn't going to win best sound design or something like that. But it's fun in the sense that it's just kind of fun to pick teams and all that. But I do think that the nominations, I think it's interesting because the Game Awards serves as a bit of a barometer, a bit of a cultural barometer for what is popular and what's in the cultural consciousness. Not necessarily what's the most successful, because if that were the case, Monopoly Go would, be in nominated for every category, but no one gives a fuck about Monopoly Go, the highest grossing game in the world. Did you know that? It makes like $1 billion and it's literally just a gamble machine. It's really crazy. But because the Game Awards nominations are picked by an actual international panel of game journalists and people who actually play video games. And so, yeah, is everyone going to agree? Is like the common layman going to agree? No, but as far as people who actually, I think that usually the Game Awards have actually gotten, I think they kind of get it right. There's some whack picks and some whack nominations every now and again. But in general, in terms of nominees and wins, I think that they usually, no one's been really upset over Game of the Year winner. There was that one time It Takes Two won, but I think that was just a slow year in general for games. And it was like, yeah, it's fine. So I actually generally trust the tastes of the Game Awards committee. And I think that the fact that there's been a shift, that would be interesting. That might be an interesting side channel video to go and look at the nominees for every single year and see if there's a noticeable tone shift over time. I think the fact that there are so many, the only big company, big publisher in Game of the Year is Nintendo. Actually, Death Stranding 2 is Sony as well. That's 2 out of 6. Everything else is relatively small publishers and small teams, and I think that's actually pretty cool. I think games are going to be just fine. We're gonna be okay. Hey, you know what else is gonna be okay? Vampire Crawlers, baby. The game that just got announced as I sat down to record. Vampire Crawlers is the first spin-off made by, I believe, Ponsel itself, or Ponkel. I don't know. I've actually never known how to pronounce it. To Vampire Survivors. So Vampire Crawlers is, as the name might suggest, a dungeon crawler using all of the Vampire Survivors aesthetics and assets and stuff. And it's kind of like you took the UI for Vampire Survivors and all the items and weapons and enemies and stuff, but it's been kind of crunched into a turn-based deck builder with roguelite elements, which usually I roll my eyes at because, well, welcome to the club, buddy. But it's Vampire Survivors. And so I must play it when it comes out. It looks cool. I don't know. I've never actually played a Slay the Spire. I've never actually played one of those. I have somewhat limited exposure to the rogue. I've played a fair number of roguelikes. Not all of them, not a ton of them. I think roguelikes are a genre that I enjoy. They're a very easy game to just keep going back to whenever you don't know what to play. But I feel like roguelikes really appeal to a type of person. If they click with you, they really click with you. There is a type of person for whom that is just a crack. That's just a crack pipe. And I've never been that into the genre, but I think that's the reason you see so many of them. I almost stumbled over my words there because the other reason you see so many of them is that they are very cost effective to produce. I think I've mentioned this before, but yeah, roguelike games, anything that uses generative, procedurally generated layouts and assets and arrangements of assets and stuff, you get way more bang for your buck out of a little tile set than if you're making something a lot more linear where you're going to only see a hallway one time. So, yeah, Vampire Crawlers, that's on my wish list already, baby. I look forward to that. And now we're going to get into like 1 trillion movies that I've seen in the last, how many we got? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not that many. Okay, so I'll go through a couple of these. Oh man, I don't know how fast. Okay, so Kat and I went to go see Running Man. We went to go see Running Man, the new... What is his name? Dude, I always mix him up. Running Man. Glenn Powell. I always confuse him with Colin Powell, who's like a political guy. He's like a politician. Anyway, Running Man, the new Edgar Wright film that Kat was really into because she loves Edgar Wright. It is an adaptation of a book, a Stephen King book from 1982. Most people are probably familiar with it because of the 1987 movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, which apparently is nothing like the book. The Running Man is, according to Kat, who knows better than I, in her words, 95% like the book. For better and worse. So, the movie's, it's been really interesting to see some of the positive and negative response to the movie. I think that it's really... It's kind of like pushing a very fine line where it is an intensely satirical film. And it's really silly and over the top because of that satire, but it takes itself within the world of the characters. They have to take this very seriously. This is just the world for them. Personally, I actually quite liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun. But if someone disliked it and felt like they couldn't take it too seriously or some parts were too much for them, I would totally understand. Some of the performances are a bit hammy in a way that I didn't mind too much. I think because to me it fit the tone. But again, it's a give and take. So what's the premise of The Running Man? So The Running Man takes place in the year 2025. Where Glenn Powell is he's a working man, he's a blue collar guy, and he is living in fuck future. He's living in shit fuck future, which is a little bit of a departure from a lot of depictions of the future of a shit fuck future that we get now. Because it's not really cyberpunk. The book is from 1982. So the cyberpunk aesthetic wasn't really firmly in the public consciousness yet. I don't even think it really existed. And so it's not really Blade Runner. It's much more Eastern Bloc in its depiction of a shitty urban environment with horrible wealth inequality and stuff like that. Horrible living conditions for many people, but people at the top living incredibly nice, lavish lives with just money to burn. It's also a world where pretty much everything is centralized into one singular entity that they call the network. It's implied they run the government or have effective control via paying off whoever. They run all the mainstream media. They run all sorts of different institutions. They run the information network. There isn't really a version of the internet because that didn't exist yet. But there is sort of... It is kind of funny to see a vision of a futuristic setting that was written like pre-internet and when home computers were still relatively kind of in their infancy. So they're still using cassette tapes. a lot of brutalist architecture. The cars are they're still like wood panel cars. It still feels like kind of, it's early 80s, so it feels kind of 70s, like shitty 70s. This is shitty stuff from the 70s. Glenn Powell is, when the movie opens, he's down on his luck. He's in a bit of a rough spot. He has been let go from his job at some kind of a factory or something like that. Some industrial job, because they were exposed to he and all his coworkers were exposed to radiation because of poor safety, poor safety enforcement. He talks to a union and then gets let go for it. So he's let go. This is like I honestly don't know much about Stephen King's personal politics, but this is like an extremely leftist story. Because the world is essentially takes place in a fascistic government. There isn't much of like a purity or nationalistic quality to it, but it is in terms of everything being centralized around where all of the different what is the wording? What is like the word? One of the like identifying features of a fascist government. All corporations congealed into one. All different sectors congealed into one. No real distinction between public and private sector. Like the game show that the whole thing centers around, like works with the police and stuff like that. This is the anti-union, anti-worker vibe that the whole set, like the animosity of corporations towards their employees and stuff like that. And so his daughter is sick with the flu, and in the futuristic year of 2025, he cannot get medicine for her, and he doesn't want his 2-year-old daughter to die. His wife is now put in a situation now that he's out of a job where she has to start. She works as like a cocktail waitress. She's got to go into even seedier parts of town to get more work and more tips and stuff. And he feels horrible about it. So he decides that his one kind of Hail Mary option is to go on these, these horrible, I'm going to call it a Mr. Beast game show, where it's like watching people suffer to earn money. And that kind of gets me towards one of the things I found very striking about the movie, because again, it is apparently really close to the book. And what I find a little like disturbing is that there's a lot of stuff in this movie that in 1982 Stephen King would have had to like explain. He would have had to write out a description of what happens. And now we just have words for those things. Like, I was thinking about one of the scenes that happens, and in my mind, as I was retelling what happened in my head, as I was digesting it, it was, oh yeah, so they make a deep fake of him. And then it kind of hit me, that word didn't exist when Stephen King was writing this book. And it's kind of scary. It feels weird, especially because it takes place in 2025. Like, so the show that he ends up going on is The Titular Running Man, where the idea is he has to survive for 30 days, and everyone in the world is trying to kill him. If you're a regular person, you can take a photo or a video of him and report his location, and you'll get a bonus, and people are very poor in this world, so that's very enticing to them. So you get a bonus for it. If there are also police officers which they call goons, which is very funny, who I think are also trying to hunt him down. And then there is a team of what they call hunters, who are like ex-mercenary military guys who are the show's own hunters. They're trying to catch him and stay on his tail. And then every day he has to record himself for 10 minutes, and then drop it off in a post box where it'll be played on that evening's episode of the show. And he does this thing where people will start... He starts sending in some tapes where he's talking about fuck the network and this and that. And then they play it on TV, and suddenly he's saying, I love eating dogs. I love eating babies. I hate babies. I love stomping on them and turning them into juice like a blueberry. And he's watching it and he's like, what the fuck? He's like, I didn't know that they could do that. I didn't know that they had that technology. And that's just a deep fake. That's just like an AI video and AI voice generation, and it looks seamless, right? That's really weird. The fact that I even described it as a Mr. Beast game, I think strikes that it feels a little awkward. It's a little uncomfortable. I think it's interesting that there's this element in the movie where people are so poor, but also not really able to, they don't feel like they can do anything or organize in any meaningful way against the people who have constructed this system, that instead they go by the rules of capital. Instead of trying to upend it, they just go by the same rules, and that's used to turn them against each other. Glenn Powell's character is just a normal guy. I mean, he's got anger issues, but he's just like a normal guy. And when he's presented to the public, they call him a criminal. They say he's like a criminal thief or something like that. And he's not like you. You know, you're much better than him. Don't you want to turn him in? So they construct this narrative that turns regular working class people against each other. And and gets them to turn each other in for money. Oh, wow. That's actually, I wasn't even thinking about that part. Ooh. It's like when you see, you know, people who they sign up for ICE to go be like the Gestapo. And then a lot of them like are immigrants themselves. And they're like, well, I needed to pay for whatever. I needed to pay for health insurance. And you're like, oh, fuck. And then you watch Running Man and it's like, oh no, that's just like the world. Oh, and it's takes place in modern day. Yeah, it's, so I enjoyed many aspects of the film and its pacing. I think that I find the premise to just be inherently exciting, because it kind of gets you in that mindset of like, how would I survive? Where would I go? What would I do? And there's some really fun action sequences here. There's some really fun action scenes of Glenn Powell jerry rigging. So whenever there's a camera pan to some random regular object, you're like, uh-oh, how is that gonna show up? How is he gonna use that to get out of this wacky situation? And there's just absurd levels of carnage and bloodshed. It makes him into a murderer. The show makes him into a murderer. Yeah, I just found it kind of consistently engaging and to be like a fun action movie with some uncomfortable social commentary that feels like it actually aged really well. Yeah, overall I liked it quite a bit. Also, I have to mention, any movie that plays dude, why am I so bad? Galt McDermott. Why? I can name him so easily until he has to come up in conversation. Any movie that plays Galt McDermott on the soundtrack gets a point up, in my opinion. That was cool. This is being an Edgar Wright movie. It's not particularly. It doesn't feel that much like one of his films. He's known for like his really snappy editing and use of licensed music and stuff like that. This feels like it is. I think that in going for a more faithful adaptation of the book, he kind of muted his own personal style a little bit, which, depending on how much you were looking forward to that, could dampen your enjoyment of the movie. I like Edgar Wright's movies that I've seen, but it wasn't a deal breaker for me. But yeah, no, I generally liked it, and is apparently a pretty good adaptation. Afterwards, we watched the Chainsaw Man movie, Reze Arc. So I don't have like a whole lot to say about the film because it is literally just the next part of the manga. If you've never seen Chainsaw Man, I think you could actually go into this and not... I know several people who watched this movie without ever having seen the anime. And I think that if you just get a basic refresh or a basic rundown of the status quo, the what I call it, the basic premise of the show, you're probably pretty well equipped to watch this. It's kind of funny how it doesn't build too much off of the events of the first season. Obviously, a lot of the same characters, same concept. It's obviously the same setting. It really does no legwork to get you caught up to speed, but I think many aspects of the world are pretty self-evident. If you just tell someone, Denji is a guy, he's a teenager living in Japan, and there's these things in this world called devils, which are like the manifestations of people's fears, and people make pacts with them to get their powers, and they go fight devils using devil powers. Denji is part of... He was like a street urchin who got the powers of the Chainsaw Devil, and now he works for the government, and he's got these wacky co-workers. Also, he's in love with his boss, Makima. That's basically all you need to know. Like, I think you could honestly... Yeah, you could probably, with just that, you could go in and essentially be equipped to enjoy the film. It takes... When I say that it's just the next part of the manga, I mean the last shot of the first season is the first shot of the movie. It is the exact same scene where they've all fallen asleep in the I guess dining room, or by the room by the balcony of their apartment. It's the same scene. It's just Denji wakes up. I guess I'll spoil a little bit of the movie if you haven't seen it. I would say it was actually really fun. I liked it a lot. It is just the same stuff that I liked about the first season of the anime, but it's just like 4 episodes of an anime with really nice animation, especially in the back third with the fights. The fight scenes get crazy to the point that Kat was telling me she actually felt a little bit nauseous. Like she was starting to get a headache from just how insane like the lights and the motion were. Personally, I didn't have that issue. Also, Kat's prone to headaches in the first place. And it's my fault. It's because of the way I speak. So, yeah, this is a nice little arc that is kind of advancing Denji's... The overall, the running theme of Denji getting what he wants with a catch. So he meets this girl named Reze, who I immediately was suspicious of because she was so aggressive in her pursuit of Denji. In like a very manipulative, the kids are calling it love bombing type of way. Denji is a character who, for how physically powerful he is, and I think this is also like a really cool aspect of his character, for how physically powerful he is, and how like high his endurance is and all that, he is very emotionally vulnerable. And so opponents who might have a hard time fighting him could just like send a pretty girl after him and he just melts. He is completely swept up by her charm and her beauty and how into him she seems to be. There's a really crazy sequence when they spend a lot, they sneak into a high school after dark, and they have a few, and Denji never went to school, So he's kind of like not used to it. And there's this really interesting sequence of them like stripping down and getting in the pool. And because he tells her that he can't swim, and she offers to teach him how to swim. And that sequence is, the way it's presented is insane. It feels like the music and the way it's shot, there's like cuts to outside the school where there's a spider ensnaring a butterfly in its web that it keeps cutting back to. And it's so, how do I it feels like something insane is happening, but you can't really understand that yet. Something crazy is going on, but I don't have the context. We were talking about how Cal was surprised that there wasn't as much of a group dynamic in this movie. I think that slightly helps a little bit, because if you are a totally new viewer, you don't have to know as much about the characters' existing dynamics. Denji spends most of his time with Reze. Aki is kind of off doing his own thing. Makima and Power barely appear. And you're mostly just getting what's interesting is that after what just happened, which is where all the characters have to work together, a lot of this movie is them spending time apart and kind of, how do we do stuff on our own? Denji says that he's worked his way, he's got enough trust with the organization that he can spend a little more time unsupervised now. And now that he has agency, he has to actually make choices for himself. Denji is a character who honestly has not been given very much choice in the way that his life goes so far. And so, I mean, if you think about it, he was basically saddled with this horrible, shitty situation from his parents. He was duped. He was betrayed and left for dead by the Yakuza. He became a devil because of Pochita's own love for him. And then being a member of the public sector devil hunting division was essentially just Makima scooping him up. And he was happy to go along with it. But she basically just said, yeah, otherwise we're going to kill you. So he doesn't have a lot of agency over his life. He's kind of working towards... That's kind of one of his almost long-term goals as I see it. And that's part of, like, he's working his way up to becoming a more fully formed person with life experiences and stuff. So now you get to this arc where he has to spend a bunch of time basically on his own with someone who isn't from the government, with this new character, Reze. And he's faced with this conundrum of he has feelings for Makima, but he's got feelings for Reze, and who does he choose? And usually I kind of roll my eyes at conflict like that, but I think with a character like this, it's actually really interesting, because I actually care about what Denji is going to choose for himself. I know that neither of these bitches are good for him. I know that Reze is like a free... have you seen her eyes? I was like, why is she being presented like a demon? Oh. And Makima too. Like, none of these women are good for Denji. But how he interprets them and who he chooses and why is really important, I think, to his character. And he sort of gets led down there's a lot of cool... I really just love Fujimoto's writing. I really do. I think he's so interesting. All of these little thematic elements that he works in. There's there's a question that they bring up, I believe it's Aesop's fables. There's an Aesop fable about the country mouse versus the city mouse. And it is essentially a question, the country mouse versus the city mouse is a question of what kind of a life do you want to live? Do you want to live a life of comfort, but relatively meager pleasures, or the opposite, a life with a lot of excitement and change and disorder, but with, let's say, a higher payoff? And different characters have different different characters have different answers to that, which also ties into one of the stories, like one of Chainsaw Man's other running questions or sort of motifs, which is what characters want and what they're willing to give up for it. You know, the whole show is about these pacts that people are making with demons, but also other people. Or concepts and things like this, like Aki with his cigarette. What are you willing to give up the cigarette and the cursed sword, giving up your health and your life for a momentary feeling of relief or a temporary power boost? What is Denji willing to give up? And so he's faced with like a bit of a conundrum where Reze asks him if he wants to run away to the country with her and be a country mouse. And to Denji, he wants to be the city mouse. He's kind of had it. He actually doesn't want comfort. He wants the excitement, and he's okay. His whole life has been chaos. And I almost wonder if Denji feels like he may as well. Like, he's going to get drawn into something absurd. To borrow verbiage from JoJo, absurdity will always crash into his life. And if he's going if this is going to happen to him, he might as well be in a situation where he gets the most out of it. The things that are important to him. The twist with Reze actually being a devil, I mean, you could have called it. I knew there was something up with her. I didn't know exactly what. But it wasn't like, it's not like the whole story hinges on the reveal. And there is quite a bit of time afterwards the whole third act of this movie is bonkers. The animation on Reze's movement and her attacks and the sound design is crazy. This is like a Sakuga GIF factory. Just, she is so fast. There's all these like she sounds like a jet engine when she flies around. The effects of like the bombs, all the different explosion sound effects of like, there's like the little popping ones, and there's the big poof, and then there's a poof. There's the ones that sound like fireworks. So cool. And again, it's got the thing that I find really cool about Chainsaw Man, which is magical motherfuckers blowing each other through buildings. I was kind of surprised at how much I liked some of the side characters that got introduced in the last few episodes of the first season, the only one that's out so far. That was definitely one of those things. That was an aspect that I could tell, because Kat was like, yeah, they seemed really minor when they were introduced. And to me, that was more a consequence of the fact that, we only have so many episodes, so we're going to adapt this much of the manga. So, as we're going into, I guess you'd call it the first real climax, which is the fight with Samurai Sword, we're going to introduce a couple minor characters. They're not going to do anything super crucial in that fight, that little, Samurai Sword fight. But they're going to show up and you're going to get introduced to them because in the next arc, they're going to be more important. And I actually really like them. Violence Devil guy is really funny. I think he has a really funny dynamic with Kobeni. I know a lot of people probably find Kobeni annoying. I think she's really funny. I just think that the fact that she shows up and like anything bad happens and she's like, oh, fuck, oh, god damn it, and she just starts crying, I think is kind of funny and endearing. She just cannot handle what's going on, which is a fun contrast to all of the other characters who are either like very stoic professionals or they enjoy the chaos, or they're more well equipped and more mature to take on what's happening. Kobeni just can't deal with any of this shit. I think that's a fun type of character, and to then match her with this guy who is so like just generally strong and agile and stuff that he's got kind of like he just has this like big confidence. he's not like a big showboat. He's just sort of a goofball. Like, he doesn't take things that seriously. I think that's a fun two characters to pair up. I also loved Shark Guy. Beam, I think is his name. I think he's really fun. I loved how he shows up at the start of the movie. He's like a big annoyance to Denji, and then once the heel turn comes with Reze, he turns into like the biggest bro ever. It turns out that actually he will actually lay off when Denji tells him to maybe cool it with wanting to be my friend all the time and just be a little chill about it. But he will risk life and limb for that man. By the end, I mean, when you had these wacky, wild scenes of Denji riding Shark Guy with his full transformation, both fully transformed, and he's like riding the Shark Guy like a horse up the side of a building that's getting lifted up by a gigantic hurricane. I was like, yeah, this guy rules. Also, I have to say that this movie I think the reason that this had to be a movie was because it fulfills the shonen anime staple. The one thing that, it's this trope that no one ever talks about, but every shonen series worth its salt needs to have a movie where the main character and maybe some of the side characters have to run up a bunch of like swirling spirals or tendrils or tentacles or pillars or something like that to get to the top of something or the center of something. They all do it. There's a Bleach movie where that happens. There's gotta be a Naruto movie. I know there's a One Piece movie where that happens. The My Hero Academia, one of them that happens in that. Just, we're gonna run up a bunch of like spires and or slides or whatever the fuck in a big action sequence. Exciting motion, movement. We can't do this on an anime budget. There's too much stuff going around. So yeah, that was cool. Kat loves Reze. Kat really loves Reze in a way that she always likes these like dastardly women. I don't know what's wrong with her, because she's like a really nice, sweet young woman. But she for some reason she really connects with these total, I don't know what. She likes Reze a lot. I think Reze's like a pretty interesting villain. I was glad that she got gamered at the end. I was gonna be a little pissed if Denji just let her live at the end. She killed like 100 people. Like, Denji, I get that you're like, you know, you're kind of blinded by the horniness, but come on, man. Like, you gotta put her down. So I was kind of like, oh, thank God. Thank God Makima fucking sent 1 million spears through her head. I also I like that some of Reze's character development, that you get a little touch of it at the end, just a little bit of a hint, the fact that she was actually basically molded in a lab in Russia. And that's because that's a question that I was wondering. Why didn't Reze just kill him? I mean, Denji was completely caught off guard. She had so many opportunities where she could have just killed him and left him for dead. But for some reason, she humors him, essentially. It's what it seems like. And takes him out on all these dates and teaches him how to swim. And does completely unnecessary stuff, right? For how powerful she is. And then there's like one little line that kind of explains it, where she says that she actually never got to go to school either. So there's kind of the implication, yes, she is an evil piece of shit, but she kind of saw herself in Denji a little bit. Sort of people who had trouble fitting into society, who were given these incredible powers against their will, or by maybe in situations that they wouldn't have wanted to, and now are kind of caught up. I think she's working for the Gun Devil. And is that by choice? I don't know. The same way that Denji is kind of forced to work for the government. So yeah, I liked her as a character. It's a good movie. It's a good addendum to the show. Someone gave me a box set of the Chainsaw Man manga. What is this? Volumes 1 through 11? Yeah, 1 through 11. I don't know where that takes me up to, but I want to dig into that relatively soon, and Kat's also interested in it. So, yeah, Reze Arc. That was a good anime movie. Now I want to talk about Zootopia. The new Zootopia movie's coming out kind of soon, and Kat wanted to take me to it because of course she did. So she put on the first movie for me, which I have never seen. Zootopia is a really weird movie. That's the best way I can describe it. I knew that it was about race, and I knew that like some people had some issues with the way that the movie goes about its racial allegory, but having never seen it, I never had much of an opinion on it. And now having seen it, I don't think it's perfect. I actually think there's a lot of weird problems with it. So, one of the reasons it's weird is not just the allegorical stuff, but it's also because in many ways, the movie actually isn't about race. I would say that a majority of the film is actually spent on stuff that has nothing to do with race and does not advance the main theme at all. Most of the movie is just a buddy cop story with no real, like, thematic additions to the racial themes. And then suddenly it's like at the beginning and at the end, like the first little bit of the movie. And then the climax kind of relies on the racial dynamics and stuff, but also it resolves it in a weird way. So Zootopia takes place in anthropomorphic animal land, anthro world, if you will. It takes place in Furcadia. Is that a deep reference? I don't know. The main character is Judy Hopps. She is a little bunny who lives in the city. She lives in the country. She's the country mouse, and she wants to be a city mouse. Denji man. So the biggest problem with the movie is actually, it's weird to talk about the film to like start explaining the synopsis, because the worst part of the movie is the first scene, because it kind of like fucks a lot of the shit up and frames it in a really strange way. So in this world, there are predators and prey, like, you know, in the animal kingdom. And at the start of the movie, it's the first scene where you're getting exposition on the way the world works, and it's kind of setting up the basic racial, not racial conflict of the world, which is that predators used to rule over prey. They used to terrorize them. But now they've learned to chill out and not eat meat. And now they all live together in peace and happiness. And okay, so I'm just going to jump right into it. So at the start of the movie, I was absolutely certain that because of the way it was framed, that the prey animals were supposed to be minorities. Because the idea that they would be not that was a little absurd to me. It didn't even occur until much, much later in the film. Because, okay, this is a play, right? It's a story in the universe. But then there's a scene right afterwards, during this whole flashback thing, where baby Judy Hopps goes to help some other bunnies or whatever who are being picked on by an older bully who is a predator animal. He's like a fox. I think he's a fox. And she helps him, and he fucking she fights back against him, and he swipes her and cuts her. And it's like, oh my God, can you believe the oppression of these predator animals? Look at these backwards ideas that he still subscribes to, unlike our hero, Judith Hopps. So here's the problem. The predators are the minority, and the prey are the majority group. And that makes shit super fucking weird. It makes it super weird. It completely reframes the start of the movie in my mind. Essentially, the way it begins is, like, let's just cut the shit. Predator... Don't quote this out of... Actually, please quote this out of context. Predators are black people, and prey are white people. So, the start of the movie is Judy Hopps, a white girl, puts on a play where... that is about how black people, the scary black people, used to oppress the poor, innocent white people. But now, the black people are evolved enough to not be so savage. You know, they learned to be civilized. And now we all live in harmony. And then afterwards, so this is like this is like literally birth of a nation. This is birth of a Zootopia. Afterwards, Judy Hopps then goes and, yeah, like, that Fox guy was bullying those kids. But then she, like... So she's just put on a play where she's been talking to this Fox kid who's in the audience about how his people, his class group, used to be violent savages, and now, thankfully, they've evolved enough to live with the rest of civilized people. And actually, that not only that, but Judy Hopps wants to be a cop. That's so crazy. Actually, I want to be a cop too. Not only, I want to be a cop so badly that I'm going to be the first rabbit police officer in Zootopia. Like, she is... Dude, like, do you see why this is weird? Do you see why this is weird? It's weird because, as an allegory, like, okay, I get certain aspects. I was talking to a friend about this, and I get certain aspects of the allegory. Like how, despite the fact that everyone claims that everybody gets along, there's still a lot of racial bias, but you know what I mean. Racial bias and stuff like that exists in this world. The main villain is trying to basically make all the predators go feral so that they can justify, like, locking them up and, like, causing social discord. I'll talk about that in a second. Like, there's still these issues. But, like, when you do an allegory like this, I need a little bit more history. Because, like, real racism in the real world is not, like, genetic. I think that this is, like, a little bit important, and I think it's surprising that I didn't learn about this until very recently. But, like, whiteness and blackness were concepts that were created by newly christened white slave owners so that they could justify having slaves. Because most of their slaves, I talked about this before. It used to be that you couldn't, many Christian countries had laws where you couldn't own slaves who were Christians. So most slaves were Muslim. A lot of slaves came from Africa, where they were, a lot of them were Muslim or belonged to various regional religions. And then eventually, at a certain point in, like, the 1600s, when religious conversion became a more widely known thing, and it was kind of became more common to convert people from one religion to the other, that presented a threat to the economic, like, slave working force of landowners, of, like, Christian landowners. And so they were like, fuck, we have to come up with a new category to separate our slaves from us. And the most obvious one was like visual. So let's just say that we're white and they're black. That's where like modern white black racism comes from. The concept of being white is inherently like it's an idea, it's a concept. It's not like saying that someone is Asian, because that's like an objective fact. They or their family are primarily from the Asian continent. And we all generally agree where Asia is, right? Whiteness is an idea. It's just a concept. That's why Irish weren't considered white. That's why Italians weren't considered white, because like those fuckers didn't own slaves. They were in like the case of the Irish, they were the ones being exploited. So why would we let them into the in-group with the special privileges? And I think, again, to reiterate, that dynamic exists to reinforce, like, for economic reasons. It was to reinforce, it was to reinforce the power of like owners on people in the land that they owned. And like this is where real racism comes from, which is why it's really, really weird that Zootopia frames racism as, well, first of all, okay, you run into this problem because in real life, it's like a good thing that predators exist and eat meat. Like, realistically, Zootopia should have a horrible overpopulation issue. Predators serve to keep populations in check. Predators gotta eat. I thought it was funny that there's this trailer that we get for some. Is it a Pixar movie that's coming out? I forget what it's called. But it's like this girl who gets her brain put into a beaver, and she's like running around in the wild. And the little bit of the twist is she learns that like nature isn't like the happy-go-lucky magical world that she thought. And there's like a scene where there's a bear that's trying to eat another beaver, and she saves the beaver, and both of them, are the bear and the beaver she saved, are like, dude, why did you do that? And she's like, what? She was gonna eat you. And the beaver's like, I mean, she's gotta eat something. She's gonna starve? Like, this is just how nature works. This is just how things work. And she's applying her fallacy, and the joke is that she's applying a human perspective onto like basically a whole world she doesn't live in. And that's kind of what Zootopia does. Like, it's really strange because, yes, predators they have to be the minority in the ecosystem. The energy has to flow up to the top. They aren't like tyrannical. They keep things in balance. Which is why, like, so two things that I took away when really thinking hard about the allegory in Zootopia. Number one is that this would work much better as a class allegory, but maybe we're not woke enough for that. This would work much better as a class allegory. Just the dynamic on its own. It still wouldn't be perfect. I think it's still, again, weird to do this with the natural kingdom, but the idea that they're the animal kingdom, the idea that there is a small group of people for whom all of the resources flow up towards, to the detriment of, the lives of the people below them who make up the majority, works way better as a class allegory. It's almost completely inverted as a racial allegory, which leads me to the second thing, which is that this movie makes perfect sense. The allegory fits perfectly if Judy Hopps is a Yakubian devil. If you are of the belief that 10,000 years ago, there was a black scientist named Yakub who created white people in a lab, And then the evil white people rose up and overthrew the black people to then rule the world with white supremacy. You are gonna love the allegory in Zootopia. It's gonna rock. It's gonna rock your cocks off. But yeah, seriously, like, okay, the other weird thing is that misled me is there's like an N-word joke that comes from Judy. She gets to the police station and there's like what is he, a leopard guy at the desk, and he calls her cute, which is kind of demeaning. But she says, "Oh, well, rabbits can call other rabbits cute, but it's kind of weird if other animals say that about a rabbit." And I was like it's a funny joke, but it's clearly like an N-word joke, right? Like that there is no other real world thing that you could apply that to. And it's framing Judy as the black person, which is why it totally took me off guard when, no, she is a member of the majority group. The movie's just got a lot of weird shit like that, where if you think a little too hard about it or know a little bit too much about the real world, it starts to get really awkward. I imagine that if you're like a child watching it or you don't think that hard, it probably makes sense. Or like you're like, yeah, racism's bad, which is just like the moral of the movie. Sure, it's for families. You don't have to get so crazy about how, like, that's the other thing, is that there isn't, like, I feel like there's a limited view into the institutional nature of the bias against predators in this world. I kind of just wish I had more info, but unfortunately, the movie, again, just spends the bulk of its runtime being a buddy cop story and not really talking about the racism at all. And what's weird is that all that stuff is actually really good. I think that the allegorical aspect of the film is easily its weakest part. It has the most holes in it, and it rings the most hollow to me. It doesn't feel very well thought out. But a lot of other aspects of this movie are actually pretty great. It's a Disney movie, so it looks really good. I say of course, but Wish exists, and that movie looks like ass. But the movie looks very good. I think that the setting is really fun. There's a bunch of ways in which I have questions about how it works with all the different climates that they have in one city, but fuck it, I don't care that much. It's just visually cool to have, here's the jungle biome area, here's the snowy area, here's the desert Sahara area. That stuff's neat. They live in, what is it? TikTok Woods? Click Clock Woods? What's that level from Banjo-Kazooie? They live there. The visual design of the way that the setting has to account for all the different animals and little background, I wouldn't even call them gags. They're just little background details of, like, the hippo gets to work and they swim through the water. So there's a little air blow dryer on the floor where they get out that dries them off before they head to work. Like, that stuff's fun. I think that a lot of the movie does a lot of fun things with the animal theming and the fact that every character is an animal who has to move around the world in a different way and might need different accommodations, might need different sizes of things. Tons of puns. I do like the puns in the background. There's tons and tons of puns for background shots, and that stuff's a lot of fun. Little background details. The dynamic between Judy and Nick is pretty fun. It's a pretty classic buddy cop thing where she's she's the bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, not to be speciesist, not to make an anti-bunny microaggression, but she is a bushy-tailed new recruit. She has a strong sense of what needs to be done, and we're gonna do this. And I want to be the super cop. I want to be the most cop ever. But obviously she's naive and she isn't that experienced with the world. She comes from the countryside. Contrasted to Nick, he's been around the block a few times. He was sort of born being kind of an outsider. He's a Deleuzian pervert, if you will. He basically decides that whatever he needs to do to get his way, he's going to do it. He doesn't care. Which manifests in the form of running sort of little scams on people and stuff like that. They go out of their way to not make him too scummy, but that's kind of the implication, you know? Buying stuff and reselling. He's like a drop shipper. He's a popsicle drop shipper. And they have a fun dynamic. The way that their friendship progresses is neat. It is crazy when you get to the scene towards the back half where Judy just goes like super race realism on Nick about how predators are biologically more dangerous. One of the really weird things that I kept thinking about, which Kat had never seen, was the clip from the 90s, I think, of Hillary Clinton talking about black people and calling black gang members super predators. Like that, I kept thinking about. She just specifically described them as people with no conscience. Like savage animals with no conscience. Kat had never seen that clip. And just like, I don't know if I was supposed to think about that while watching Zootopia, but it is really weird to watch that scene with that in mind. And, yeah, oh, so there's the best scene in the movie is one where they go to the DMV and they talk to the sloth. When it first started, I was like, all right, this is parent bait. I remember seeing this in the trailers, and it's clearly a joke that's there too, because, oh, haha, you know, parents, adults, we've all been to the DMV before, and oh, aren't they so slow? And then it's actually like the funniest scene in the movie. I gotta give it up. I didn't have faith. That was my mistake. I didn't have faith. I should have trusted you, Zootopia writers. I should have trusted you to write a really funny DMV scene, because it is... It feels like a Monty Python sketch, to be honest. Where it's like, how long can we drag the joke out? But that's part of the joke. It feels like that. The villain of the movie is very weak and strange. She's a little sheep who wants to... she's just like a super racist. Her motivation is that she's just a super racist. I won't say that she like doesn't make any sense in the context. Oh, I'm getting a call. Whoa. All right, where was I? The sheep. I was talking about the twist villain, the kind of weak twist villain of this movie. So, she sort of comes out of nowhere. The whole mystery of the film is it's like, okay, there's this otter who's gone missing. There's, and eventually they stumble across this plot where animals or this thing, this phenomena where predator animals are going savage. They're going crazy. You know, they're reverting back to their, you know, before the white man gave them books and stuff and Shakespeare and Greek philosophy. They're going like that, you know? And this is the big reveal is that this is all being caused by the vice mayor or the assistant mayor of the city, who wants to make all the predator animals savage to basically spark a race war, I guess, to get to stoke fears that predators can't be trusted, and that so that I guess they'll run all the predators out. So she's like a hyper racist, I guess. And I say she's a weird villain because I think that in a way, like I said, the theme of being like anti-racist isn't that strong in the movie. In a sort of detached way it is, because it is two people from two different groups, which are the racial analogs. coming together and learning to be friends. You know, Judy's told before she leaves, that foxes can't be trusted and stuff like that. And then, who does she make friends with? A fox. Although she never like actually distrusts foxes. Funny enough. So it is two people from these two different groups learning that they can be friends, but they don't start with any particular prejudices against each other. And so, I don't know, I guess it leaves like the villain looking kind of stupid. It also just sort of happens. It really feels like it just happens the writers were like, oh, right, we need to make a villain. So she shows up and then she reveals her plot and they stop her because of the thing that they set up with the recording device that catches her. And then she's caught. And then the movie ends and it's like, racism's bad. Okay, all right. Not the strongest villain in the world. I kind of wish the movie was a little more clear in one direction or the other. If you're going to have the allegory, I wish that it was a little stronger and that it actually leaned into that. Like, hey, you know what does it really well? Of Orcs and Men from 2012, I think. Which is a story that I wouldn't say, it's not really about racism as much as it is about race broadly, although racism is a large component of that. And it's really important to the plot. But that's a story that uses non-humans as allegories for, not exactly there isn't like a direct allegory. I'm using the word allegory a lot. They're using non-humans as representations. The word I used before was shorthand. Like, you kind of get the gist of how orcs and goblins and elves and fantasy humans work in a lot of traditional Tolkien-derived Western fantasy. And the game doesn't throw any huge curveballs. It's not trying to be subversive. That's kind of the point. These are very archetypal, for the most part, depictions of these fantasy races. And it says, okay, you basically know the dynamics of these. Here's how they interact and here's how they think about their race compared to others, right? And that game has some like really, really biting storytelling and moments. Like some of the depictions of racism, some of the conflicts within members of the same race about loyalty to your identity and your culture and stuff. There's some really compelling stuff. And basically everything that happens in the game furthers that narrative. It furthers the story of Arkai and Styx and how they feel about being an orc and a goblin. And each other, right? Styx is like I think a really interesting character for most of the game. And yeah, like the game does kind of sputter out near the end when they hit the budget wall, the budget ice wall. But I think overall it still tells a very solid story that a lot of like allegorical race stories kind of fail to, where they kind of, I saw someone once say that in fantasy stories, the difference between fantasy and sci-fi is whether or not black people are monsters or robots. And unfortunately, I think a lot of writers fall into that trap. I think that there's a lot of writers who are kind of geeky and white, and they're very self-conscious about the fact that they are geeky and white. And so when they write a story about race, or they feel compelled to, they almost like try to protect themselves by putting something a little more familiar. They put like a bit more of there's a layer in between them and the real subject matter, the story and the real subject matter. So they're like, oh, black people, they're minorities, they're like aliens or robots or orcs or something like that. And it can just cause some weird things. It's just like white people get to be humans. Human beings, even if they're other races, even if they're other colors in the story, they represent the majority group. And like, obviously you're thinking about like, how were you supposed to think about that? And I think that's where a lot of them get kind of awkward, and Zootopia falls into the same trappings. I think that there's just generally an issue with using non-human characters as stand-ins for real human identity groups in a lot of... It's really tricky, and I think that if you're going to make them like very close stand-ins, one of the benefits that of orcs and men has, one of the things it has going for it, is that they don't make the orcs any really particular group. There are many different groups throughout history that you could compare them to and say, oh yeah, well there's many ethnic racial group from the north invades racial ethnic group to the south for imperialist conquest, makes them slaves, has them build a border wall. That could apply to a lot of things throughout history. And that's something that you can start talking about after you get through maybe the primary thing. It doesn't feel like there's any allegory. The allegory is almost a secondary thing. The primary thing is, how do we think about race? And I guess that's how Zootopia, how it falls. I wouldn't say I love the movie. There's several parts of it that I enjoyed quite a bit. But, I just find the writing weirdness too distracting to really give it a thumbs up. It's just, I get why people like it, but I just can't really see past the shortcomings of the story and its metaphor. You want to talk about metaphor? I just saw Angel's Egg in theaters. Oh boy, you want to talk about metaphor and allegory? So, Angel's Egg, 1985. Classic anime film released originally only on VHS. It's part of the 80s Japanese OVA boom that existed as a result of their bubble economy, where animators were just pumping out the craziest shit you've ever seen, the most insanely good-looking animation ever, because there's so much fucking money to go around. Yeah, this will never blow up. This isn't a bubble. This will never explode. Oh. But we got some amazing work out of that, such as Angel's Egg. I dropped something on the ground. So Angel's Egg is it's from 1985. It is by Mamoru Oshii, who is probably better known for Ghost in the Shell. What other stuff? Ghost in the Shell, Pat Labor. He's done a bunch of movies. A couple of Urusei Yatsura movies. Blood, The Last Vampire. Halo Legends? The hell? Okay. Did he direct the Hideo Kojima documentary? Okay. Or was he... I don't know. Anyway. So this was the movie that killed his career for like 10 years. Until he made Ghost in the Shell exactly 10 years later, and it saved him. So, Ghost in the Shell... Angel's Egg got a 4K re-release. Over the years, it's become a cult classic. I saw it several years ago, and it got it for the 40th anniversary. It's receiving a 4K restoration re-release and a brand new dub. That threw me off. We were looking up screenings, and Kat said, "Oh yeah, no, it's right here, Angel's Egg, the English dub." And I said, "There's no English dub of Angel's Egg," but they recorded one for this release. We went to the sub because that's the version that I've seen. That's, I don't know, that just feels, I just want the original, close to the original experience. I'm sure the dub's fine, but I wanted to see the original. And it's a movie that I saw once many years ago on a tiny laptop screen with the covers over my head. And I remember I was just in a weird feeling afterwards. I remember it had a very strong effect on me that was difficult to put into words. And I just, it was a weird day after that. And since then, it, in my mind, has really appreciated in value. And if people ask me what some of my favorite movies are, I usually end up naming Angel's Egg. It made a big impact on me in kind of weird ways that, again, it's hard to articulate. I also love it for the fact that the art design, the art direction, was actually done by, it was a collaboration between Oshii and Yoshitaka Amano, best known for his work on the Final Fantasy series. Amano is one of my favorite artists ever. I have a video about his work for Final Fantasy on the main channel, and a lot of people seem to like that video. So this was actually before, I think I watched this movie before I even got into Final Fantasy. So this was the first I'd ever really seen of Amano's work, and let me tell you, it is crazy. Seeing this movie on a big screen in 4K with like a big movie theater sound system, this might sound kind of weird, especially if you're more familiar with the movie. I got like really emotional watching it, and that's weird because the film has almost no plot. I in the first 20 minutes, I was so, it was emotionally overwhelming. I almost started to cry because of the visuals and the music and how it's so hard to put into words. I had a really strong reaction to seeing it in theaters. The crowd was great. They were very quiet, which you need for a film like this. There's these moments. Okay, so if I could describe the plot of Angel's Egg, I would say it's very abstract, and there's a lot of vague storytelling in it. There is some kind of a not sunken, but there's some kind of long abandoned city. There's this girl who lives in this big boat-like structure that's far outside of the city. She wakes up, she goes, and she's taking care of this egg. She takes the egg to the city so that she can get a jug of water. She meets a man. They walk around. They go back. Some stuff happens that I don't exactly want to spoil. And then the movie's over. That's the whole movie. That's the whole movie. It is a lot of slow shot, a lot of still shots, a lot of walking around in quiet areas with really moody, haunting piano score. The film oscillates between moments of, it feels very vacuous. There's lots of empty space and empty noise in the soundscape, and then it'll just, between that and overwhelmingly loud. There are moments in this movie that are so loud, it hurt my ears. If it went on for a few seconds longer, I would have had to cover my ears. The sound was almost unbearable at points. It was just a rushing wind and shrill whistling and almost like a sound of an explosion. It's so powerful, and then hard cutting to silence, hard cutting to nothing. It's really intense, powerful sound. It's got that great old movie buzz in the that's just a little bit of white noise. It kind of lulls you a little bit, where you just take it in, you absorb it. The background ambience, the art is it's gorgeous beyond anything I can describe. This film is a visual showcase. It is Yoshitaka Amano showing you how fucking cool his artwork is, and goddamn, it is really cool. It is constantly just, it's like still, mostly just like locked down shots of not a lot happening, but just, it's almost like flipping through an art book or going to a museum, and you have so much time to just soak in all of the detail in every background and every illustration, and just get really absorbed into it in the soundscape. This is not a movie for everyone. It's a movie where it's going to test the limits of what you can enjoy. as a mood piece. I would describe this film as a mood piece in large part. It doesn't tell much of a coherent story. There are things that happen, especially near the end, and there's a lot to read into, but it's largely just floating in an atmosphere and a vibe, and enjoying the visuals and stuff like that. And for some people, like me, you can get so into it that you almost cry. And other people are going to be like, wow, that's really pretty. Is something going to happen? And you know what? That's a perfectly valid response to this movie. Okay, but is something going to happen? When are they going to get to the fireworks factory? I would absolutely recommend it, just because I think that if you've never seen it or anything like it before, and there's not that many things like it, it will really tell you a lot about your taste. How much plot do you need in something? How much do you need to ground yourself? Can you just kind of float there? And some people can't, and that's fine. But for me, I was really glad. I'm really glad that we went to go see it. As soon as I heard about it, I had a tab open on my computer that I would refresh like once a week to double check if there were any screenings available near me, and thankfully there was. It was a one-day thing. There was like a couple theaters that were showing it a week before, but again, just on a single day that week. I think there was only one screening at my local theater that we managed to get into with a relatively, I wouldn't say packed, but there was a lot of people there because it was such a limited release. I am really glad I saw it. I was worried about what Kat was going to think, because she kind of knew, she kind of heard of it, but she'd never seen it before, and I don't think I gave her a little bit of a fair warning, like, hey, the movie's kind of slow. And when it ended, she threw her hands up and she said, "That was it? That's the ending?" And I thought she was mad. And she's like, I said, nope. Shh. Wait for the credits. The credits, which are just text on a black background with a song over it. I said, wait for that. And then once that was over, after 5 minutes, I said, okay. Because I was still digesting. And then we got up and we walked out, and I said, what did you think? Or I said, you didn't like the ending? And she said, I wish it was longer. And she loved it. She actually loved the movie, which I was really happy about, because sometimes I show her movies that I love, and she doesn't like them too much. Shed a tear for The Damned. The Damned was a movie that, I thought she was going to like it a lot, and she did not. She thought it was really boring, and I was like, uh-oh. Am I going to take her to Angel's Egg now? But she really enjoyed it. I think she really appreciated it, which I was happy about that we got to share that. She said she would have been cool with like 10 more minutes of just that movie. And she got a call from work while we were in the theater. And it was like, ugh. And it kind of popped my bubble too a little bit because I was so into it like 25 minutes in. And then she got back and it was just work being like, hey, you're working on Friday, right? And she was like, yeah. Okay. Cool. You got to work. You're at this hour. And she's like, yeah, I know that. It was one of those like, this could have been a text. Why did you have to call me? And she was so annoyed by it. We were both really annoyed by it because it kind of snapped us both out of how into the movie we were. And it took a little bit for me to get invested back in. But like, yeah, that was very annoying because it's like when you're in a really locked in emotional state and something disrupts that, it feels so bad. It's so aggravating. Like if she said that if that had happened during like The Running Man, she wouldn't have gotten as upset because that's a much more action-packed, fast-paced movie. But Angel's Egg, it's like you gotta sit in that. You gotta stew. So my advice, I can't tell you to go watch it in theaters because it's already over. But if it ever comes to a theater near you, if there's ever like an independent screening or you just want to buy it and put it on for your own home theater or something for your friends or have a little get-together to watch it, everyone silence their phones. Seriously. I know it's like a nerdy thing to be like, hey, can you silence your phone? No, really? Like, no distractions and they're going to thank you. Like, I really just, it just flew by. The movie's only like an hour, 20 minutes, but it just, I couldn't even tell you if it felt long or short. Time just seems to not exist while you're watching it. It's a movie I have a lot of affection for, and an affection that's grown even stronger now that I've rewatched it in that setting. Absolutely phenomenal. Probably one of my favorite movies ever. Angel's Egg, my love. I don't know why. I just a completely still shot or a nearly still shot of the girl looking out her window with this piano music playing over it and just her hair moving really slightly in the wind. I almost cried. I don't know what it's just a lot. It's just a lot. And now, good God, we're already at 2.5 hours. System Shock 2 time. So, I just, for whatever reason, the other day, I just had a real hankering to finally sit down and finish System Shock 2. System Shock 1, I think now has become like one of my favorite games. I'd put it up there in the top 10 list, whatever. I love that game a lot. I've experienced it about 5 times, all told. I've played the original. I played the Enhanced Edition twice, I should say. Maybe I need to do the non-Enhanced Edition now. I played the Enhanced Edition twice. I played the remake. And I've also been on stream with my friend Prox when he played the Enhanced Edition and the remake himself. So I know System Shock pretty well. And I am very loving towards that game. I really love it. But the one you always hear about is System Shock 2. And for whatever reason, I just said, okay, I played SS2 a long time ago, and I never quite finished it. I think I got through like the first third of the game-ish. I got up to, what is it, Hydroponics? It's like the 4th deck. And for whatever reason, I dropped it. And I couldn't remember why I dropped it, or if I even had a very strong reasoning for that. It was back when I was in high school, so I wasn't as good at articulating myself. And I just decided, okay, let's just do it. Let's just play System Shock 2. So now having finished the game, I kind of marathoned it over a 3-day period. And having finished it, my main takeaway was, man, System Shock 1 is a really good game. That sounds like I hate SS2. I don't. I think System Shock 2 is a great game, but I don't like it as much as the original, which I loved instantly the first time I played it. Maybe if I decide to replay SS2, I will enjoy it more. But I just find, how do I talk about it? I usually don't like to be too negative because I don't overall feel negative towards the game. But whenever I think about it, I think about how strange it is as a sequel and how many things I think the original just does way. It's not like, okay, SS2, a lot of the things that are good about System Shock 2 are present in the first game. But the first game has like a lot more stuff that I love. And SS2 has its own set of things going on, but I don't love all of them. So to begin with, they're very different games. People often describe System Shock 1 as being like a dungeon crawler. I kind of get that. I see where the comparison is. It's definitely inspired. It's basically a descendant of the Ultima Underworld series. The UI is derived from those games. Yeah, I see that comparison. That's a decent comparison. System Shock 2 is a survival horror game. There were definitely survival horror elements in the first game, but the dynamic was very different. System Shock 2 has way more resource management. Way more resource management. It's also much more of an RPG than the first game, with very heavy RPG systems and as a whole stat system and equipment and damage numbers and stuff like that. Well, it doesn't have damage numbers; it's implied, but it's got health bars. The original SS had health bars, technically. So System Shock 2 has a really cool opening. I really love the character creation segment where you're playing this time as a soldier who is stationed on board the ship the Von Braun. And in the lead up to going to the Von Braun, you walk through almost, I guess I'd call it a montage of your past military service, where you choose which branch of the military you want to go into, and then you have a choice of 3 tours at a time, and each tour that you have the option of going into will give you different stat boosts based on what skills are challenged by that job, which is actually a really cool way of doing it. And then you go through that 2 or 3 times, and then your 4th tour is on the whatever Von Braun, the U.S. I forget what what do you call it? USS, HMS. What is that? The sign? The designation? I don't remember. The Von Braun is the ship that you're on. Going to Tau Ceti 5 on a scientific research expedition. And suddenly you wake up, everything's gone to shit, much like the first game. You've been implanted with cybernetics, and a Dr. Polito is guiding you to reach her on the 4th deck. Of course, there are many obstacles to this. And then you go about system shocking. So, it's much more of a horror game. That is in part due to the lighting engine. Some of the enemy systems. This game is made in the Dark Engine, for better or worse, which is the same engine that Thief is in. Thief 1, at least. I think all the Thief games are in there. And how do I arrange my thoughts on this? Because it's a big game with a lot going on. So there's the lighting is pretty intense. The game can be very dark when it wants to be and hide a lot in shadow. So I guess I'll start off with kind of how my emotional roller coaster with this game. I did not like the start of the game. A lot of those comparisons I was making to the first game were, I think, the least flattering here. part of the issue is that I think that Medical from System Shock 1 is one of the best first levels in any game ever. And the first it's medical slash science, I think, in SS2, I don't think is anywhere near as concise and efficient and clean as the first game. I think you do just about get acquainted with everything, but it kind of runs into this problem, which is that honestly, it feels really disconnected and disjointed as a level. So for one, in System Shock 1, all of the levels have a very clear shape to them. If you just look at the maps, they probably look a little messier than they feel to navigate, but basically all of the levels arrange themselves along very strong shapes with inner and outer rings and corridors that go off in different directions. And then side paths and shortcuts and all sorts of stuff in between to link everything up. System Shock 2's maps look a lot more like a bunch of Lego bricks that got snapped together. Of this thing, on this thing, on this thing, on this thing, and then over here. And then there's a loading screen to get to here. And that's part of what leads to feeling a bit disjointed, is that you go through, you're on the same level, but there's a loading screen in between two chunks of the level. And it'll be like a new map that the game has to load in that you're in now. Which leads to a much weaker identity for at least the early levels. It also leads to, because it's not designed around these very strong shapes, I find that the level design tends to be actually a little more confusing than I found System Shock 1 to be. Once you have made like your first run around a level in System Shock 1, hey, this might be just me being very familiar with that game. I feel like you've got a pretty good sense for roughly where things are because of how strong like the landmarking is and how the paths kind of naturally lead. Like, yeah, there's all these side rooms and stuff, but generally there's like major paths that connect one segment of the level to another. System Shock 2 doesn't really have that nearly as much. There's like one level, what is it? It's not athletics. Recreation. Recreation in the last third of the game that does that. But for the most part, it's just not as clear to me. Also, I think the visual design is a lot more drab. I think that you could take a screenshot from any level in System Shock 1, put a mosaic blur over it, and I think I could still tell you what level it is. Maybe there's a couple where the tile sets are reused, but for the most part, every single level has a super strong visual identity that is unique to it and is not shared with anything else. I could instantly tell you what looks like that looks like medical, that looks like research, that looks like security, that looks like maintenance, instantly. A lot of the visual design in SS2 is very samey. It reminds me a lot like Half-Life. just like science corridors and pale white and gray walls and, you know, maybe a stripe along the ceiling, but it's pretty like, it feels kind of generic. A little bit more Star Trek-y, I guess, rather than the really out there colorful visual design of the first game. I think the Von Braun in general is a much weaker setting than the Citadel Station from the first one. So that's not great. I also don't love the combat. It's Dark Engine combat, which can be fine, but it veers into Dark Engine combat, especially melee for me, can veer into Bob Dylan a cappella territory, which, if you don't know, is a term that I've started using for like when something is fine as a component of the game, but when there's too much focus on it, you realize that it's not very good. And it's like if Bob Dylan said, "All right, guys, now here's an a cappella song," and you're like, "No, no, 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 no. You don't need to do that. We can stick with the hey, come on, where's the harmonica, Bobby?" I missed the harmonica. You play the guitar. You don't have to sing that much, man. Which is notable in a lot of games like, I don't know, Silent Hill 1. That's what I describe that as. Yeah, sometimes, like, I got used to the combat, but there were many moments where it pissed me off. The animations are weird. Like, there's not very good feedback on when you hit something. The timing of when does something actually become active? When is it dealing damage? There were moments, like, range is really strange. There were several moments where I am crouched at, like, the little enemies suck. The monkeys and the spiders, or in the worms, when you have to get down and, like, crouch down and hit them, and this monkey is taking up 70% of my screen, and somehow I whiff. Somehow I whiff my wrench swing. What the hell is going on? But you kind of learn to, like, work it out. You sort of work through it and figure out how you need to position yourself. I also love I had to get used to it because I love the laser rapier. And I was kind of a little back and forth on the game for a while. And I think it starts to pick up. And for me, that the moment it starts to pick up was right around when I got the laser rapier. That was when I got so excited. I gasped. I said, I forgot it was in this game. I think I knew it was, but I forgot. And they do this thing, I guess this is the other thing I'm not, like, super duper hot on, which is the implementation of the RPG elements. They attempt to balance a lot of the game's weapons and abilities by essentially stat gating them. So I pick up the laser rapier, one of the best weapons from System Shock 1, absolute hero weapon. And I try to equip it, and it says, you need an energy weapons skill of, like, 3 and an agility of 4. And I was like, oh, okay, I haven't really been putting points into those. So that then became my next objective. Just get enough of the cyber modules, which you use to level up, and equip that damn laser rapier. And what's really funny is that they attempt to balance it by stat gating it, but once you actually can equip it, it is still really strong. I think it does less damage than the original, but it is still a really powerful weapon. And I think that when you have it equipped, you could make an argument that it's stronger than the old one because it doesn't consume any resource. It's really weird. Every single energy weapon has to be charged individually. Instead of having an energy bar resource that gets consumed when you use anything that is marked as consuming energy, the game has every single one of those things hold an individual charge, and you have to manage them item by item. But for some reason, the laser rapier just doesn't do that. You can use it willy-nilly with no fear of running out of energy or having to recharge it or it breaking, which is a big problem in this game. I was talking about the RPG mechanics. Okay, let's double back for a second. So the RPG mechanics are fine. I just kind of prefer the original game's method of progression where you get new items and you find new weapons and stuff, and you just get to use them immediately. without like having to put points into learning a skill. Uh, I find like gating stuff behind stats a little bit arbitrary. Maybe there's a world where it works better for me, but I don't know. I just got kind of annoyed. It felt kind of arbitrary to me, and I just wish that I could do everything. But that's because I am not as into the vibe. I'm not as much into the vibe of the game. In the original, it really feels like you are taking the station back from Shodan by wiping out most of the enemies, taking down the security level, and really like becoming the master of your environment. And in this game, it feels almost like you're perpetually on the back foot, which I think a lot of people would like. I just think I'm not as much of a fan of being stressed out and having to constantly maintain stuff, which is like, okay, weapon maintenance. Oh my god, weapon maintenance. Very weird. Handled very strangely in this game. So there are a bunch of skills related to how weapons and stuff deteriorate. So you can, as you use weapons, they wear down. And when they wear down entirely, they get jammed and they break and you can't use them unless you repair them. And you can repair them up to a certain level of quality. But then if you want to improve the quality of an already fixed, not broken weapon, you have to rely on a different skill called maintenance. So you need to put, it's really strange. It's kind of strange and clunky that they're split into two things. It doesn't make much sense to me. And I ended up in weird situations where it was easier for me, instead of maintaining a working weapon, to instead wait for it to break and then repair it back to a usable form. It's just really weird. I don't like it too much. And apparently, I'm a total sap. Because even putting points into those skills is stupid, because there are just items that do it for you that I think work regardless of skill. So, stupid me, I guess. Egg on my face. Apparently, it's really easy to make a non-viable build in this game. I didn't run into that. I mainly spec'd into hacking stuff, because I know that hacking is anything like hacking or lockpicking. I usually go for that in games because I know developers like to hide stuff behind those mini games and those ways of gating content off and items. Also, hacking it makes your life so much easier. Like I hack almost everything in System Shock 2. The doors, the turrets, the chests, there's just so much shit that you can get through by hacking. Oh, the security terminals that will just disable the security for a few minutes. The hacking minigame isn't great. There's no cyberspace. Instead of cyberspace hacking to open up doors, like in the first game, you have a hacking minigame that is bad. You click on nodes until 3 nodes light up in a row, and then hack successful. How do you know which nodes will light up? You don't. You just click on them until something happens. And then if you fail, it's like, uh-oh, do you want to reset and spend some nanites, which are like the universal currency? Or do you just want to reload the quick save that you made right before you did the hack? Oh, what am I going to do? It's kind of ends up just being busy work, which is a shame because you're doing it so often. There is so much goddamn hacking that you're doing in this game, and the hacking is very lame. Yeah, I'm not... The whole idea of, like, managing weapons and stuff kind of got a little tiring. got a little tiring for me. Again, just kind of a subjective thing. I'm not that into how often you need to maintain your weapons. I think it's a little ridiculous that a shotgun wears down in like 20 shots. These are the worst. It is the future where we can synthesize matter out of nothing. But for some reason, we cannot build a shotgun that lasts for more than 20 pulls of the trigger. They just break and snap in half. Okay. I think the plot is interesting. Apparently this didn't even start out as a System Shock game. And you can kind of tell. Because the sequel-y elements are a little shoehorned in. Shodan is in this game. Oh my god, did you know that Shodan's in this game? She's only on the cover and talking to you like the whole game. Before she reveals herself. Yeah, Shodan's in this game. And what's really odd, this is, now having played this game, it is really strange to think about how many people have only played System Shock 2 and not the first game. Because the way everyone talks about Shodan is how she's like in System Shock 1. And in System Shock 2, she's a different character. She just has a completely different role. Like, if you've never played these games, it might surprise you to know that in System Shock 2, you are not on a space station or a ship controlled by a rogue AI. It sort of is, but like it's not Shodan, and the one that is barely a person. It doesn't even, not really a personality. The villain, Shodan is not the villain of System Shock 2. The villain are like mind-controlling space worm hive mind things called the Many, aka the Annelids. Shodan is actually your ally. It's sort of funny to look at this and think about how much Valve stole for the Portal series. Even down to the new AI in the second game being blue. Although Wheatley is a better character than Xerxes, who is not a character. But I find the story kind of intriguing, and it's actually kind of fun for a sequel. So eventually what's revealed is that no, in fact, Dr. Polito is not the one who's leading you up to the fourth dock, or the fourth deck. It's actually Shodan who's been impersonating her. The story goes that in the first game, when the hacker detached one of the groves, which you had to do to trigger the self-destruct mechanism, if I remember correctly, one of those groves crash landed on Tau Ceti 5, and the life that she had been growing there mutated into this bizarre like Tyrannid-esque hive mind thing that just absorbs biomass and is able to send their little space worms into people's, like, living things' minds and possess them. And kind of take over their bodies and their minds and stuff into the big united whole, the Many, as they are called. And they're pretty creepy. They are these, the human enemies at least are these like shambling zombies who are wandering around. They hold their rifles really weirdly. They hold them like clubs because it's literally the same animation from Thief. If you've played Thief, you're going to get a lot of deja vu when playing System Shock 2 because a lot of the animations are just the same thing. One thing that was pointed out to me that I actually didn't quite get when I played it was that the people that have been possessed are kind of aware. They're still in there somewhere. And so when they moan, some of the voice lines, like they're apologizing to you. They're telling you to run because they can't really control their actions anymore. That's a very creepy idea. It's pretty cool. The reason that they're on this ship now is because when the Von Braun went to Tau Ceti 5, they made first contact with these aliens, and then guess what happened? Aha! It's like, Prometheus. I'm going to eat this black goop. Uh-oh. And also, I guess Shodan had kept like a backup server on the Grove, so she's still there, and they also took Shodan on. Sure, okay. So after the Shodan incident from the first game, the next time that Trioptimum builds an AI, they are so scared of another incident like that happening that they put all of these safeguards in place to make it so that Xerxes, the new AI, is basically can't go rogue like that, or if it does, that someone from the crew can just backdoor into the system and neutralize it. This ends up biting them in the ass, because once the crew gets primarily possessed by space brainworms, they end up reprogramming Xerxes for evil. I believe the goal is they're gonna... Well, you've got to stop... your goal now is to stop the many. You're trying to destroy them and their... whatever is their, like, super intelligence in some way. I also imagine... I think they're, like, trying to go to Earth or something. They're trying to preserve themselves, and you're like, we got to stop this. This is like a weird parasite thing. And Shodan wants to destroy her creations because they aren't really beholden to her, and they reject the steel. There's kind of an interesting dichotomy between them. Shodan represents, making something better via... She thinks that her goal is to improve organic life by adding the technological to it, whereas the many are entirely organic. They are like the super organic. And that's their strength. So even like the cyborg, what is it, the midwives? Those are probably one of the creepiest enemies in the game. They have this really uncomfortable... They're like these freaky possessed cyborgs. They're cyborgs, but the human parts of them have been possessed by the many. And they have these like skull-like bulging eyes and sunken faces. They go around humming like nursery rhymes and stuff because they're there to take care of the young of the many. They're a creepy villain. I don't think they're as strong as Shodan. That's another thing that that feels like a little bit missing from this game, which is that Citadel Station itself felt like a character, because it was essentially Shodan. Shodan was the world. She was the setting. And in this game, the Von Braun is just a ship. It's just the place that you are. And there isn't really a character for you to go against. You feel like what's so great about the first game is that while you are mastering the environment itself, you feel like you're fighting Shodan, like I said. And so even when she's not talking to you, even when she's not setting up traps for you or interacting with you, there's still a feeling that you are interacting with her. And it's a constant relationship that you're she always has a presence, no matter where you are or what you're doing. And in this game, the Von Braun is just a ship, and the many show up when you run into them. They've got their zombies, they've got their big meatballs, they've got their worms, and all the other things that they've possessed. But yeah, they're just kind of like a monster. And that's not bad. There's lots of games where the threat is like that. It's just, I don't know. It's not as cool, I guess. What else about this game? So when I say that it picks up kind of in the... when do you get that? Like maybe after the third deck? I'm trying to remember when I got the laser rapier. Like after that first third, maybe halfway through, it started picking up for me. Before that, I was going with it. It's the solid System Shock gameplay of an objective comes up, you try to go accomplish it. Many things happen in the way that you have to do before that. And when it gets better, I think is for me, when I started enjoying the game more was when I felt like I was getting more capable. At a certain point, weirdly enough, the game got really easy for me. I was just drowning in ammo. I was drowning in stim packs. I was drowning in resources. I didn't really have to worry too much about weapon degradation because I had a lot of maintenance tools. My skills were high enough that I could rely a lot on just the basic guns, the pistol, the shotgun, and the laser rapier. Eventually, as I put some more points into energy weapons, I got to use the energy pistol and stuff like that, which is pretty fun. And that's when I started to have a little bit more fun. I guess I just like feeling more empowered in my games. But before that, it was kind of a drag. That's what it felt like. And then, honestly, most of the game, my patience got a little tested with the last, 2 decks that you go on. The bridge and the... What is it? I keep forgetting recreation. Just because of how many high-level enemies they throw at you and how limited ammo becomes. And this game has a very aggressive respawn system. It's really aggressive. Enemies are... I'm not playing the remastered edition, by the way. I'm playing the original. Or at least the one that you can find on GOG, which I think is running on New Dark. So it's not like the original, but it's the non-remastered version. This game has a very aggressive respawn policy. And at the higher levels, that became a little grating with how many of the big security robots they were throwing at me constantly. That got a bit fatiguing, and especially with the massive size of some of the later decks. I think the fact this game has an objective tracker is a big improvement on the original, where you just kind of had to wing it and guess, kind of read into some of the audio logs to figure out what you needed to do next. What else? So, yeah, I would say that after those last couple decks where my patience started getting tested, you go into the body of the many, which is a neat sequence. I don't think I hated most of it as much as I hear a lot of other people. They go oh, the game falls apart. I actually didn't have too bad of a time with it. I didn't even think jumping into the radioactive pool was that bad. I had lots of anti-radiation stims. It's interesting. It's a change of pace. The lead up to the final boss of the many, which isn't the final boss, really pissed me off. Once you actually... The back half of the body of the many gets really annoying. There's some really weird platforming you have to do on these goddamn teeth. That was terrible. The lead up to it was bad. It's not a great final boss. It's actually really close to the Half-Life final boss. You shoot the crystals that are protecting the heart, I guess, the core, and then it becomes vulnerable, and then you shoot it a lot, and then you jump down. Yay. But and then that's not it. Sorry, we got to wrap up this Shodan thing, because now Shodan is betraying you, and she is taking the ship's light speed drive and is using its ability to warp space to reshape reality, which is kind of interesting. And then you drop down into medical from System Shock 1. And I'm not going to lie, I know that maybe this sounds like stupid nostalgia pandering. I did get really excited. It worked on me. I clapped because I know what that is. I did think it was really cool to see medical again. They didn't copy the music. It's not even the entirety of the level. It's just the first little chunk, but it's pretty faithfully recreated. And that was really cool for me to go back in like the dark engine and replay that. And then you do a final boss against Shodan that was hilariously easy, mostly because I had really strong energy weapons. And then the game's last cutscene I thought was really lame and dumb. I think that the main character speaking for the first time just to say, nah, and then shooting her was really lame. I think that it's like... Also, the face that she makes is so stupid. It looks like the annoying orange. I wish that it had been a choice that you had to just shoot her. It's really weird to play an immersive sim like this and have a choice like that just be up to like a cutscene. Like, damn, I kind of wish that you just let me shoot her for real. That would have been cool. But no, we gotta have... I don't know. I just thought it was lame. And then there's a really lame sequel hook. So my whole progression with System Shock 2 was... First bit, it was like I wasn't feeling it. Then I started to enjoy it. Then I got a little fatigued. And then it kind of picked up a bit. Then it got on my nerves. And then it was cool. And then I thought the ending was lame. So quite the roller coaster. And honestly, putting all my thoughts together, there are cool things about the game. The horror is neat. The story is neat. It's an interesting way to make a sequel that doesn't feel like you're just doing the same thing again. It's really strange. I don't know how... People talk about the twist in this game, about like Shodan's reveal. It's a cool moment, but like... I called the twist hours before that. They basically spoil it for you in the game when the many asks you why you're helping the person who, tried to destroy humanity 25 years ago. And it's like, the twist, it's only a twist if you haven't played the first game. The sequence where that happens is cool. You know the one. It's the only video, it's the only clip that anyone ever uses of System Shock 2 with all the screens filling up with Shodan's face when you're in that holodeck type room. That stuff is that's a cool moment. Definitely very memorable, and a pretty cool introduction to her as a character. But it feels like whenever anyone talks about Shodan, they're talking about her in a game that they haven't played. And she's fine in this. I think it's interesting to cast her in the role of an ally. But if you've never played the first game, you are really missing out on most of what... Like, that whole moment with her, with the screens, that's the one, like, Shodan moment TM in the whole game. Whereas the first game has just tons of those. There's just tons of incredibly memorable moments with Shodan. So that's weird. It's a weird thing, weird part of the game and its legacy. What else do I like about it? The progression is still pretty satisfying, at least like how you progress throughout the game. It's definitely a game where it's hard to put down because of the way that it's paced. Because the objectives just kind of keep rolling one into the next, and there's not a lot of clean moments for you to just take a break. Things that I didn't like... I'm not super hot on the RPG systems. I find them a little bit arbitrary, and they didn't make the game very... I don't really see what it added, in my mind. I guess it's like, oh, there's a bunch of ways that you could build a character, and it's like, yeah, but you could probably do that without stat gating stuff. You could have used the implant system for that. Prey has a skill tree. I think that's a good implementation. Yeah, I just felt like kind of arbitrary RPG elements that I didn't feel was that justified. Some of the combat can be really whack. The game at certain points gets... I can't be mad at it for being cryptic because I love System Shock 1, so I won't be a hypocrite. Some of the things are just annoying. There's just a lot of little things that get on my nerves. Fighting some of the enemies gets really annoying. The way the respawning works gets kind of annoying. Oh my god, that area with the crates, the cargo bay on like the third level, or what is it? I think it's on maintenance. Fuck that part with the elevators and the robots that blow up. Oh my god. The horror stuff is cool. The horror stuff is neat. It's very I think I watched it's the Mandalore review, and I definitely agree with him on the really sharp contrast between moments of horrifying gore and like it looks like a massacre has happened versus really clean hallways. There is like an overwhelming sense throughout the game that something has gone really wrong, and that this is a space that isn't meant for. So this isn't a space. That's not a space where this is supposed to happen. Other stuff I like. The men are neat. They're sort of a cool villain. There's some really good audio logs in this game. There's some really good voice acting, some very cheesy voice acting as well, but some really good performances from a couple of the actors that really sell some of the moments. Oh, I didn't even mention that there's Diego's son, Edward Diego's son, is a character. I thought that was pretty cool to bring him back, and the fact that he is almost like obsessed with not repeating his father's mistakes and ultimately accidentally doing so, and kind of trying to help you in whatever limited way he can. That was cool. I don't know. Man, it is actually really hard. The more that I think about it, it's honestly really hard to come up with things that I like about the game. Playing it is fine. Playing it is a fine experience. I just think I'm not that into it. It made me really want to replay System Shock 1. I just don't think I maybe in the future, if on a replay, I'll like it more, but honestly, as of now, I think I'm just not a huge System Shock 2 fan, to be honest. And that's probably insane to say that I prefer the first game way more. But yeah, it's just not really my thing in a couple important ways. I'm sorry if that was disappointing to anyone who loves that game. I get why people love it. Just not. Yeah, I don't know. Just more things that I get kind of annoyed with it than that I like. A lot of the unique things it does are just things I don't really care that much for. Kind of get on my nerves. I don't feel like dealing with them. I don't appreciate a lot of the systems. Story isn't the setting isn't quite as compelling. The villain isn't nearly as compelling. Final boss is better. Final boss against Shodan, it's easy, but it's better. There are some great moments. I love that when you flip the gravity and you walk into that room that's supposed to be a chapel, but it's upside down. That's really sick. I don't know, like doing the regular meat and potatoes exploration and stuff is pretty satisfying. It's just all the ways in which it deviates from the original. A lot of them I don't care too much for. I'm being very repetitive. And I guess we end on a poor note. I guess we end on a sadder note. I'd be interested to see this game remade. I'd be interested to see if this game got a remake in the same vein as System Shock 1. Maybe it could deal with a little bit of a rebalancing. I think it would be really nice to actually connect all of the areas and not have them go through loading screens, at least nothing on a single level. That would be cool. The combat could be improved upon. Yeah. I don't know. And with that, I think I'm going to draw this to a close. If you've been listening so far, thank you for listening to me ramble. If you have a question, feel free to leave it down in the comments below, but please phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. I've been a little lazy with working on the video because I've had so much stuff recently. I did play System Shock for like 3 days, System Shock 2 for like 3 days straight. So it'll be out by the end of the month, but yeah, it's a big one. It's a chunky one. Yeah, check me out on Patreon. I have coffee. You can check out the most recent main channel video as well. And I guess go watch my panel on the side channel. So, yeah. Goodbye.